Good morning. I was very surprised to see that Gupta Empire भी नहीं किया हमने ancient history में. ये तो बहुत important topic है. If there are three themes which are very important in ancient India, prelims के लिए ज़रूरी है, mains में art and culture में help करेगा आपको. That will be first Indus Valley Civilization, second Mauryan Empire, and third Gupta Empire. Anyways, before I actually start today's class, because we are having a class, I saw last class हमारी August में हुई थी. So let's revise whatever we have already studied. I'm not going to discuss about prehistory. We started our discussion about Indus Valley Civilization, Harappan Civilization. Which can be divided mainly into three parts though, but we are talking about the mature phase of Indus Valley Civilization. Three part, for example, it can be dated as early as 3300 BC and it will end around 1300 BC. But we talk about this feature because this is the urban civilization, urban part of it. From 1900 to 1300, the remnants, they will be what we call, again, ruralization of Indus Valley civilization. So in Indus Valley civilization, we discussed a lot of things. For example, we tried to find evidences and we came to a roadblock there that वैसे तो written evidence है, but we haven't deciphered it. So we call this proto-history compared to prehistory, where you do not have any written evidence. Am I not audible? Can you just confirm? So we call this period as proto-history period. Proto in the sense that you do have written evidences, but in case of India, for example, you haven't cracked it. So Indus script hai, we haven't been able to crack it even today. But then we have archaeological evidences, and with the help of archaeology, we talked about a lot of things. For example, we thought that what type of polity or what type of society or what type of economy or what type of religion. We discussed all of those things, and most of those things, frankly, especially economy, तो चलो फिर भी हम काफ़ी कुछ बता सकते हैं आर्कियोलॉजिकल सोर्सेज को देख के. सोसाइटी के बारे में भी थोड़ा बहुत बता सकते हैं, रिलीजन के बारे में भी थोड़ा बहुत, पॉलिटी के बारे में वी कैन नॉट टेल अ लॉट, बट वी ट्राई टू स्पेकुलेट अ लॉट. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, in case of polity, we thought that it was not as such similar to grand empires of the world. That yes, all cities are divided mainly into two parts. There are exceptions though. Dholavira is divided in three parts, but most of the cities are divided into two parts where there is a citadel, and that citadel may have perhaps some ruling class, and the other part of the cities, they are inhabited by local people. We also do not know answer to this question, that were all the cities part of one grand empire, or all the cities very much autonomous, even though they had very good relationship with them. इसमें कोई doubt नहीं है. They had really good relationship with all the cities had with them. इसमें कोई doubt नहीं है. There are so many similarities in terms of the type of artifacts, in terms of the weights, measures, everything. They are very similar. But we still do not know, are they part of some giant empire or are they some independent autonomous cities? जैसे वेरी गुड एग्जाम्पल विल बी ग्रीक्स. जो ग्रीक्स के बारे में जब हम पढ़ते हैं, ग्रीक अंपायर जो है वो एज सच कोई सेंट्रल अंपायर नहीं था. बहुत सारे सिटीज थे which were very much independent, but Greeks lived many years after Indus Valley civilization. So we have some information about polity. They did not invest as such into uh, empire building process. You do not find large palaces, large temples, some things like that. In society, we mainly talked about that even though society was unequal, but this inequality was not very much as what we witness right now, or what we have witnessed in other time periods. So society can be considered more egalitarian compared to what it is right now. ये एक बहुत important aspect हमने discuss किया था. In religion, we talked about that how they worshipped nature. There are a lot of mythical deities, mythical animals which are which we have found in so many cases. In economy, we talked about that they were fundamentally trading communities. We have uh, trade occurred among cities, cities among cities with each other, and trade also occurred with contemporary civilizations of the world. So what it tells you, and by the way, trade was both land as well as sea-based route. So because we have found artifacts with information about uh, boats and ships के pictures हमको दिखते हैं, and we also find artifacts as far as Mesopotamia or in China also, where things originated from Indus Valley region. So even back then, India was a net exporter country. We were exporting things, we were importing things, but mostly we were exporting things to rest of the world. So these were some of the things we discussed about Indus Valley civilization. We also talked about causes of decline. I discussed that how there was a very famous theory called Aryan invasion theory, but that theory as of now has been rejected. The most accepted theory is that it occurred mainly because of significant drought, and that drought occurred for many, many years. Because of that, agricultural surplus declined, and people were forced to abandon the cities, and they now settled into village areas. So that ends the story around 1900 BC. When the script will be deciphered, we will have perhaps more information about इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन. तो ये तो ओवरऑल हमने एक डिस्कशन किया था. अपार्ट फ्रॉम दैट जो अगला इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ आपके लिए होगा वहाँ पे होगा कि जो साइट स्पेसिफिक चीज़ें आप याद रखोगे. जैसे अब मोहनजोदारो में इंपॉर्टेंट चीज़ें क्या मिलती हैं, हड़प्पा में क्या मिलता है, धौलावीरा में क्या मिलता है. तो जो साइट स्पेसिफिक इंफॉर्मेशन है दैट यू नीड टू रिमेंबर फॉर अगेन प्रीलिम्स एग्जामिनेशन. द सेकेंड फेज ऑफ द हिस्ट्री is early Vedic period. Early Vedic period marks the coming of Aryans to this country. This is a very controversial topic. Aryans, did they come from outside? Were they indigenous? Things like that. Was there some sort of invasion? Was there migration? If it was migration, then was it migration in one go, or was it migration in many phases? Many of those questions even today remain controversial, but the good thing is that with more and more sources, not just written sources, but also archaeological sources, linguistic analysis, genetic analysis, all of that information, we have a very good idea about the entire Aryan migration idea. So yes, now the most accepted theory is that there was migration, but this migration occurred into phases. It was not migration in one go. This migration may have occurred across hundreds of years, where various tribes who spoke common languages, that does not mean that the language is exactly same, but their origin is definitely same. And they originally settled around. So when I talk about early Vedic period, so I'm mainly talking about the compilation of Rig Veda, and I'm talking about settlement in the Punjab area. जो Indus and tributaries हैं, उस area पे जो settlement है, we call this land of सप्त सिंधु. ये भी हमने डिस्कस किया था. जो 7 rivers जो land है, which basically means Indus, all of its tributaries, and Saraswati river. We talked about again here also polity, society, economy, religion. We have very good idea here because we have written resources. Polity was tribal chiefdom. Tribe chief was hereditary position. However, his power was not absolute. We talked about that how there were tribal assemblies, and those assemblies checked the power of tribal king. Purohits, Brahmins played a very important role. Priests did play a very important role, but idea of land donation, something like that, this was not prevalent at this point of time. In fact, land donation jo hai, that started very much later. However, things like giving cows or in general uh, food, etc., they were definitely prevalent. Economy, we talked about, this was barter system. Economy was mostly agrarian, but even in agrarian economy, the more focus was on animal rearing. ये भी हमने discuss किया था. जो horse and cows हैं, they are very important animal. So we also do think that जो prevalence of horses in Indian subcontinent है, that occurred with Aryans. That does not mean that we did not have horses initially, because we have found horse bones during Indus Valley civilization also. But Aryans are very much associated with horse, and Similarly, cow is a very important animal because cow is mentioned a lot. We talked about society also. The society here, this is again a, we can call it that society जो है अभी सबसे पहले तो society polity अगर हम साथ में बात करें, so this was not as such a fixed political unit. It was a dwelling unit that people moved from one location to another location. When we talk about society, then it was a patriarchal society. However, even women had lot of rights. ये भी हमने discuss किया था classes में. Then the next phase, so early Vedic period is about 1500 to 1100 BC. And the next phase of history which we talked about was late Vedic phase, where mainly we try to compare and contrast with early Vedic period. In late Vedic period, we compared first the settlement now is in Ganga Yamuna Doab region, जो पूरा Ganga Yamuna river system है. The settlement is in this area. We also talked about that we, apart from the fact जो dwelling units है, now you also have established political units. Concept of pur emerges here. Concept of Jan जो है, which basically meant a tribe. Now the Janpad basically meant some sort of territorial entity. तो जो पूरा transition from tribal chiefdom to territorial entity है, that may have occurred around 800-700 BC. Not in the early phase of late Vedic period, but around 800-700 BC. We talked about all of those things. We discussed that how polity or how society or how economy changed. For example, polity, जो tribal chief है, he now accumulated a lot of power along with his tribal assembly. Purohits also played a very important role in this tribal assembly, and overall the tribal assemblies, which included every member of the tribe, those assemblies did not have a lot of power. तो ये हमने डिस्कस किया था. Another contrast which we discussed was that how woman condition जो है और woman participation है, that declined into later Vedic phase. Another contrast which we discussed was that lot of focus occurred on the sacrifices, the sacrificial rituals, and they became more and more prominent into late Vedic period. Even in both these cases, the tribal chiefs, and they did not maintain as such some sort of standing army. However, tribes and family members of tribes, they did participate very much into warfare by from time to time. Most of the wars were fought for cows. That is why there is a very famous word called Gavishti, which basically means war. And the word Gavishti है, उसका जो root word है वो go है, which basically means cow. So many wars were fought over cows. The concept of we talked about Gotra, जो concept है, that became very popular during late Vedic period. Sorry, I will come to that. Let's वो भी जो तीन sacrifices become very important. So first sacrifice is Ashwamedh sacrifice, second sacrifice is Rajsuya, and third is Vajpayee. So जो Rajsuya sacrifice है, that often occurred that we are going to bestow a lot of power on the king, and especially it occurred during coronation ceremony. That कोई भी मान लो एक king है, he has become king, and further to attain glory, he invited all the scholars, Brahmins of the country or of the region, and these Brahmins blessed him with all the strength and all the blessings of the gods. So जो राजसूय यज्ञ है, जैसे सबसे बढ़िया एग्जांपल जो राजसूय यज्ञ का महाभारत से हम ले सकते हैं कि how राजसूय यज्ञ has been written in Mahabharat when Yudhishthir conducts this yajna where he invites everyone of the country, right? तो राजसूय यज्ञ का जो origin है, that goes to later Vedic period. But we also talked about Ashwamedh Yagya. Ashwamedh Yagya was a tradition where you leave a horse, and this horse roams around a territory, and all the territory it roams around without any type of challenge now is part of the king. If somebody does challenge, then that leads to warfare. ये हमने discuss किया था. And Vajpayee basically was some sort of chariot race where king as well as his kinsmen, for example, other commander chiefs, they used to participate into a chariot race, but this was a rigged race, rigged in the sense that we already knew that who is going to be the winner. So king chariot was made to win in such type of races. So late Vedic period is also very interesting. Why do we call it late Vedic period? Because still जो हमारे पास सबसे important source है वो Vedic literature है. But we now are talking about 3 other Vedas as well as other corpus of Vedic literature. For example, Upanishads और Aranyaks, ये सारे जो हमने चीजें डिस्कस करी थी. तो this was comparison and contrast. We still have some names here and there, but more or less जो name based historicity है now emerges in the next phase. So the word Janpad for the first time emerges around 800 700 BC, and that was my next phase, Mahajanpad period. महाजनपद पीरियड में जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट डेवलपमेंट है, सबसे पहले हमको रिलीजन पढ़ना चाहिए. जो रिलीजियस डेवलपमेंट है वो सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग है महाजनपद पीरियड का. दैट इन लेटर वैदिक पीरियड, स्पेशली बाय द एंड ऑफ लेटर वैदिक पीरियड, जो ब्राह्मण्स का जो पूरा का पूरा इन्फ्लुएंस था ऑन द सोसाइटी, it became very powerful. While Vedic literature was very much philosophical in basis, the type of philosophy mentioned, or the type of philosophical discussion in Upanishads and Vedas, they are one of the greatest literature. And I'm not just saying it because I'm from India or we are from India, but they literally are one of the greatest literatures anywhere found in the world, and especially given the fact that they are 2000 years old. So डिस्पाइट दैट, डिस्पाइट दिस फोकस ऑन फिलोसफी, जो लेटर वैदिक पीरियड का जो लास्ट फेज है, दैट फोकस्ड एज आई डिस्कस्ड लॉट ऑन सैक्रिफाइसेस. Because of that, it led to conflict within the society. A lot of people started asking questions regarding the influence of Brahmins and questions regarding the sacrificial rituals. So because of that, two types of philosophies emerged around 600 BC, 600 500 BC. One philosophy which emerged within the Vedic religion itself, which started questioning such type of sacrificial rituals, and that led to compilation of lot of Upanishads. And such type of compilation often occurred because of Kshatriyas. So Kshatriyas jo hai, they started asking the influence of Brahmins on the entire religious development. And because of that, we do find that there is a questioning against such sacrifices, and that leads to now again back to philosophical interpretation of Vedas, and that leads to Upanishad. ये एक बहुत major development है. But the second major development है that lot of people started questioning the authorities of Vedas itself, which we call Gnostic school of philosophy. So जो आस्तिक and Nastic word है, in this case, the Nastic word does not signify not believing in God, but not believing in Veda's supremacy. So it led to Nastic school of philosophy. जैसे जो आस्तिक स्कूल ऑफ फिलोसफी में जो सबसे ओल्डेस्ट स्कूल ऑफ फिलोसफी है, दैट इज सांख्य, एंड सांख्य डज नॉट बिलीव इन गॉड, राइट, बट इट डज बिलीव इन सुप्रीमेसी ऑफ वेदास. सिमिलरली जो नास्तिक स्कूल ऑफ फिलोसफी में जो दो सबसे फेमस हैं, दे विल बी बुद्धिज्म एंड जैनिज्म. बट वी ऑल्सो हैव फॉर एग्जाम्पल जो चरवाका स्कूल ऑफ फिलोसफी है और जो लोकायत स्कूल ऑफ फिलोसफी है. सॉरी, चरवाका एंड Ajivika. So Charvaka school of philosophy and Ajivika school of philosophy. Charvaka, Lokayat, they are part of the same philosophical school of thought. So these four schools of thought emerged during Mahajanpad period, apart from compilation of Upanishads. But this also led to that the term Janpad, which emerges around 800 BC, this also leads to that many of these Janpads became very powerful. And some literature, some of the texts do mention that there were as many as 16 Mahajanpads. Mahajanpad simply means we are talking about now larger territorial entities. नाम से clear है Mahajanpad. So we are talking about now larger territorial kingdoms. And these Mahajanpads played a very important role in the political development around 500, 400, 300 BC. Many of the Mahajanpads were, some of them were more powerful than other, right? So for example, Magad was very powerful, Koshal was very powerful, Avanti was very powerful, even Gandhar was at very strategic location. जो Gandhar पूरा location है, that connects China, अभी जो India Pakistan region है, Afghanistan, Central Asia, जो पूरा का पूरा part है. So Gandhar had a very strategic location. However, we also discussed during Mahajanpad period that Magad emerged as the most powerful Mahajanpad. Gradually, it expanded its political influence, first in northern India during the time of Bimbisara Ajatashatru, which was further continued by later rulers. So we talked about many dynasties which ruled Magad Mahajanpad. Patliputra was the capital, what modern day Patna is, and the first ruler, Bimbisar, we talked about Ajatashatru. Both Bimbisar and Ajatashatru were contemporary of both Buddha and Mahavir. ये भी हमने discuss किया था classes में. बट बिफोर मौर्याज यू हैड टू मोर डायनेस्टीज, ये भी हमने डिस्कस किया था, राइट? जो शिशुनाग डायनेस्टी है और इवन जो नंद डायनेस्टी है. But before discussing Mauryan Empire, the next topic which we discussed, that was Persian invasion and Greek invasion. Persian invasion occurred as early as in 6th century, 5th century BC, and that led to inclusion of Gandhar, जो पूरा region है, as part of Persian Empire. Greek invasion occurred many years later. Persia was very powerful. It was a very prosperous region. At one point of time, it was one of the largest empires around 6th century BC, especially under Darius and Xerxes. But later around 4th century BC and 3rd century BC, जो Greeks हैं, Greeks were independent cities. जो modern जैसे Greece for example है, वो इसका एक remnant होगा. But there were many such cities like that. One of the reason was Macedonia, and Alexander was from Macedonia. Alexander had very high ambition. He wanted to win over the entire known world. And because of that, his campaign led to complete decline of Persian Empire at that point of time. Persian Empire did again emerge very powerful later, but Greeks defeated Persia, जो 300 साल से करीब करीब लड़ाई चल रहा था आपस में पर्शिया और ग्रीक के बीच में. Finally, Greeks emerged victorious, and Greeks also came to India. So Alexander, for example, fought with Porus, ये हमने discuss किया था, but he couldn't come to Patliputra, even though he did want to. This may have because of two reasons. First reason was that his army was really, really tired, and the second reason was that he had information about the army of Nand, Dhananand, who was ruling Magad at this point of time. This army included horses, elephants. It was a very large army. Magad became, in fact, a very powerful Mahajanpad who started maintaining a standing army. Standing army का मतलब ये होता है, you have dedicated group of people who are given regular income or regular share, and their job is only and only to defend as well as attack other territories, compared to the earlier practices where you did not have standing army, but from time to time people will be asked, people will be called to fight a war. So this, why Alexander did not attack Patliputra, a lot of historians think that it may have occurred because of two reasons. His army is tired, and he already has information about this very large empire of Magad. So जो Greek attack है, Persian attack है, this frankly did not make lot of changes to the political setup in India at this point of time. However, it did lead to some other changes. Trade routes opened. We had now trade with Central Asia and European countries also. And it also introduced many new cultural traditions. For example, जो Gandhar sculpture है, that has a lot of influence from Greek and Romans also. And it also led to emergence of some scripts. For example, think about Kharosthi script, which was introduced into India as a result of Persian invasion. The political setup did not change a lot, but definitely did contribute to the economy with opening of new trade routes, and it also led to introduction of new cultural tradition. ये हमने discuss किया था. But a major topic which we discussed was Mauryan Empire. So Mauryan Empire का time period. So Persian and Greek invasion occurred at different point of time. Persian invasion may have occurred around 6th century BC. Greek invasion may have occurred around 324 BC or 327 BC. जो Mauryan Empire है, जो timeline है, that will be 321 to 187 BC. You have Chandragupta Maurya as the first ruler. Mauryan Empire is often considered the first pan-Indian empire, with exception of northeastern region and the southernmost region of the country. Apart from that, we do think that Mauryans may have ruled over the entire India. However, there are some recent developments, some recent historians who actually contend that claim, who think that presence of, just say, one of the reason why we think that Mauryan Empire was a pan-Indian empire, because we find presence of Ashokan pillars all across the country. We also find in Sangam literature, I'm going to discuss about Sangam literature, that you have this mention of Maurya people, and Maurya people, often people think that they are Mauryans. We talked about that how there are major sources like Arthashastra or Indica, right? All of these are, or Ashokan pillars, which are very important sources to know about Mauryan Empire. यहाँ पे जो अशोकन पिलर के जो लोकेशंस हैं, जो डेवलपमेंट्स अंडर चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य और बिंदुसार और अशोक, they are very, very important for both prelims and mains examination. So we discussed what type of political setup, what type of social setup और what type of economic setup during Mauryan Empire may have existed. ये सारी चीजें हमने डिटेल में डिस्कस किया था प्रीवियस क्लासेस में. This is a very very important topic for both prelims and mains examination also. So this was a very important topic. अभी तक जो हिस्ट्री है थोड़ा सा स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड चल रहा है. उसका एक बहुत बड़ा कारण ये है कि हिस्ट्री राइटिंग जो है इट वेरी मच डिपेंड्स अपॉन सोर्सेज एंड हिस्टोरियंस का जो बहुत बायस होता है वो होता है रिटन सोर्सेज को लेके. जहाँ पे भी रिटन सोर्सेज अवेलेबल होते हैं वो उन सोर्सेज को ज़्यादा तवज्जो देंगे कंपेयर टू अदर सोर्सेज. What do I mean by that? For example, when I talked about early Vedic period or late Vedic period, does that mean that in rest of the country nothing was happening? The answer is not at all. But the only problem is that जो भी हमारे पास sources होंगे वो archaeological sources होंगे, and that is why you will find that in many history textbooks you will not find lot of mention about that what was happening in rest of the country in early or late Vedic period. जो recent textbooks हैं जैसे उपिंदर सिंह का जो textbook है that has tackled this problem in great detail, but for the purpose of civil services prelims examination or mains examination for also, I don't think we have to go into this detail. So I am going to continue this tradition of using only and only written sources as my major source of information, major source of history, and considering archaeological sources as secondary sources, not as primary source to deconstruct history. तो Mauryan Empire के केस में we have lot of written information, we have lot of texts available, lot of epigraphical inscriptions available. Because of that, we have a very good idea about what type of setup we are talking about. जो first three rulers हैं, they are very very important. Chandragupta Maurya, Bindushar and Ashok. But last ruler जो बृहद्रथ है वो भी आपको नाम याद रहना चाहिए. बृहद्रथ was killed by his commander in chief Pushyamitra Shung, and that even though Mauryan Empire had declined or Magad had declined a lot, but Pushyamitra Shung did maintain his control over major part of North India. इसके बाद जो टाइम पीरियड है जहाँ पे हमने खत्म किया था हमारा डिस्कशन, so I am including 3rd century BC to 3rd century AD, a period of about 600 years or at least 500 years. Together, I'm going to divide this into mainly 3 parts or 4 parts, frankly. So first part is what is happening in Northwest Frontier. In Northwest Frontier, you have 4 sets of invasions. In Northwest Frontier, you have 4 sets of invasion. जो Greeks हैं, Greeks did not go back as such. एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग फीचर आपको ये पता होना चाहिए कि जो पूरा ग्रीक रीजन था दैट वाज नाउ कॉन्कर्ड बाय रोमन्स अराउंड 1st century BC and 1st century AD. तो एट वन पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम जो रेमिनेंट ऑफ ग्रीक किंगडम्स हैं दैट ओनली एग्जिस्टेड इन इंडियन सबकॉन्टिनेंट, विच इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग दैट ग्रीक्स वर डिफीटेड फ्रॉम ऑल अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड. Romans at one point of time occupied Egypt also. Egypt was also ruled by Greeks. For example, अभी रिसेंटली एक कंट्रोवर्सी हुआ था, पता नहीं न्यूज़पेपर में आपने ध्यान दिया होगा या नहीं, कि जो क्लियोपेट्रा पे एक नेटफ्लिक्स ने एक डॉक्यूमेंट्री रिलीज किया है. क्लियोपेट्रा वाज अ इजिप्शियन क्वीन, और जो क्लियोपेट्रा का ओरिजिन है, जो एंसेस्ट्री है, दैट एक्चुअली गोज टू ग्रीक किंगडम्स. क्लियोपेट्रा का जो पूरा एंसेस्ट्री, इफ यू ट्रेस दैट बैक, शी वाज अ ग्रीक इन ओरिजिन. Even though Greeks had shifted in Egypt and they stayed in Egypt for hundreds of years. So that is why a lot of people also do not think that she shouldn't be considered Greek. But nonetheless, her ancestry was definitely Greek. इसमें कोई doubt नहीं है. Romans conquered Greek. Romans conquered Egypt. So at one point of time, whatever was left of Greek kingdom, that actually existed into around जो अभी modern Punjab of Pakistan, India region है. So that is why you have some Greek kings. For example, the most famous name here is Menander, जो हमने discuss किया था, Milind Panho जो book है. That Menander attacks. Even before that, you have some others. जैसे Demetrius का attack है. Demetrius or Menander may have attacked as far as Mathura or even Patliputra also. But this attack was definitely thwarted by rulers of Magad. जैसे Pushyamitra Shung may have fought a war with Demetrius or Menander. It is not very clear, but definitely he may have fought with some Greek rulers. At the same time, they also maintained some sort of good relations also, ये भी है. Then Parthians, who were people from what modern day Persia is, they did not play as such a major role into political development, but Shakas played a very important role. So Shakas हैं, they also occupied the northwest frontier region, जो अभी modern India, Pakistan का Punjab region होगा. However, a branch of Shakas also ruled over Gujarat region. So जो पाकिस्तान वाला रीजन है, पाकिस्तान इंडिया वाला जो पंजाब रीजन है, दैट वाज वेरी सून रिप्लेस्ड बाय द लास्ट सेट ऑफ इन्वेजन डन बाय कुशानस. बट जो गुजरात में जो शाखास हैं, दे रिमेन्ड फॉर many more years. They were actually finally defeated by Gupta rulers, which I am going to discuss in today's class. So that is one major development. Among Kushanas, जो कनिष्क है वो पक्के से आपको पता होना चाहिए डिटेल में. कनिष्क के जो contribution है, overall the developments in society, economy, religion, ये सारी चीजें डिटेल में पता होनी चाहिए about Kushanas. So that is one major development. And Shakas में भी, for example, जो Shakas of Gujarat हैं, which are called often Western Kshatrips. So for example, the name Rudra Daman is very important here, which you have to remember. Then second development which occurs is Satavahanas. Or we can talk about, for example, the remnant of Magad Empire hai. So especially by Shungs and Kanu, we can discuss about that also. We also have re-emergence of Kaling, for example. ये भी हमने discuss किया था, that Kaling became also independent of Magad Empire. But the most important theme apart from this set of invasion, it's Satavahanas. Satavahanas are originally considered as feudatories of Mauryan kingdom, but with decline of Mauryan empire, Satavahanas became independent themselves. We have talked about them. Satvahan जो नाम है, एक prakrit word है. It literally means a vehicle which is pulled by 7 horses, which basically means sun. The Satvahana rulers, and they claimed themselves to be Brahmins, and they also thought that as Brahmins, it is their job to uphold the fourfold Varna system, and they also thought that a lot of Kshatriyas have become a lot of very powerful and very conceited, so it is their job to take care of their conceit. For example, one of the greatest ruler of Satvahana is Gautamiputra Shatkarni, and Gautamiputra Shatkarni takes a title of Kshatriya Tap Mahamada. Satvahana have a very interesting feature that they are known by their mother, even though the succession hai, that is clearly goes to son, but the name goes to mother. So we talked about Satvahana administration, their significant features during Satvahana rule. They were the first rulers, in fact, who started this practice of giving land grants to Brahmins or even Buddhist monks. And simultaneously, another very important theme is Sangam Age, जो हमने last class में discuss किया था. The Sangam Age, we are calling it Sangam Age literally because जो major source है वो Sangam literature है. There are 3 assembly of poets which occurred in ancient southern India. The first 2 assemblies work hasn't survived a lot. First assembly का कुछ भी work हमको नहीं मिलता, second assembly का कुछ work हमको मिलता है, but जो third assembly का work है that has survived, and we use that third assembly's work to deconstruct history of southern India from about 3rd century BC to 3rd century AD. And we mainly talked about 3 kingdoms, Cholas, Cheras, Pandyas, but more than kingdoms, we talked about society, what type of religion, what type of economy, and how lot of elements which were very much popular in North India now were also present, not up to the same extent, but they definitely were known into southern India. For example, the concept of Varna was definitely known to Sangam literature, but it was not very prevalent in the society. तो ये अभी तक हमने, जहाँ तक मुझे, मैंने लास्ट जो क्लास का समरी देखा था, हमने इतनी चीज़ें डिस्कस करी है. So if you have any question or any doubt, you can go ahead and ask. This becomes a very, so the question is that ब्राह्मणास लिटरेचर्स जो है, जो संहिता लिटरेचर्स हैं, फंडामेंटल डिफरेंस जो है. सो वैदिक लिटरेचर का जो पार्ट है, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल वैदिक लिटरेचर इज ऑफन कॉल्ड, जो ब्राह्मणा लिटरेचर, दे आर कंसिडर्ड द सुप्रीम लिटरेचर, द ओरिजिनल वैदिक लिटरेचर. developments of Vedic literature, interpretation of Vedic literature later, it leads to development of Samhita literature. But Brahmanas can be considered. So Brahman word, it means a lot of things. Brahman word in terms of philosophical discussion also means Brahman as supreme entity. Brahman also is important part of Varna system, but Brahman also is literature, and as a literature, basically it signifies the most original corpus of Vedic literature and interpretation of this literature later that leads to emergence of lot of samhitas. Parallel, why would I use the word parallel? In fact, Brahmana literature, it is very much integral to Vedic literature. So rather than using the word parallel basically means that we are talking about two different things which have a lot of similarity. Brahmana literature is very much part of Vedic literature. So I'm not very sure if parallel is the right word here, because it is very much integral part of Vedic literature. Any question? So let's talk about the next theme, which is actually very important for prelims examination and also important for mains examination, is Gupta Empire. So give this heading. सबसे पहले तो let's discuss who exactly were Guptas. इसको लेके भी काफी सारी theories हैं. सबसे accepted theory ये है that Guptas originally were feudatories of Kushanas. And why this theory had so much of weightage? Because Kushana Empire declined by about 2nd century, early part of 3rd century BC. Around 200 AD and 220 AD, Kushana Empire had completely declined. And the first Gupta ruler, his name was Shrigupta, he becomes ruler, he becomes king in 240 AD. So there is a very small gap after the decline of Kushanas and emergence of Guptas. So a lot of people think that Guptas were originally feudatories of Kushanas, and with decline of Kushanas, they became very powerful. Second theory, which is again a very accepted theory, even though some historians do contend this, that Guptas originally were Vaishyas. एंड इस थ्योरी का जो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट रीजन वो ये है, वो सरनेम है. दैट जो गुप्त सरनेम है, एज पर सम ऑफ द धर्म सूत्रस, different varnas have to adopt different type of surnames. For example, if you are a Brahman, then Sharman is a surname. If you are a Kshatriya, then Varman is a surname. If you are a Gupta, if you are a Vaishya, then Gupta is a surname. And if you are Shudra, then Dasa is a surname. So these four surnames are very much popular in certain Dharm Sutras. And because of that, many historians think that Guptas originally may have been Vaishyas, even though some historians think that that may not be true. They may have been Kshatriyas themselves who were known by the name of as such Gupta surname. But nonetheless, Guptas were Vaishyas. ये सबसे accepted theory है. Most of the textbook will mention this thing. जो पूरा Gupta period है, from about 4th century to 6th century AD, that is considered golden age of ancient India. Golden age not only because, so literally Guptas issued the largest number of gold coins. So एक तो, but that is not the reason why it is called golden age. तो सबसे पहले जब whenever people think golden age, then we often think that maybe because Guptas issued very large number of gold coins. Not very large, but the largest number of gold coins. The gold coin quality, even though Kushanas was better, but nonetheless, even Gupta coins were very high quality gold coins and largest in number. That does tell you that the economy was very much prosperous. But the reason we call this as ancient golden age of ancient India is mainly because of development into literature, development into arts, development into fields of mathematics and astronomy. Right? So it is not because of the largest number of gold coins, but developments into different parts which actually Because of that, we consider this to be as golden age of ancient India. However, at the same time, we are also going to do a critical analysis of Gupta period, and we will see that how lot of social decline occurred during Gupta period. The social setup tha, that suffered from lot of orthodoxies, lot of significant issues which were already present. ऐसा नहीं कि उससे पहले गुप्ता पीरियड के पहले नहीं थे, but during Gupta period they became even more and more prevalent. So in social setup, it was not so much of a golden period. But in general, when we talk about India's soft power, जैसे I'm going to talk about in next class about Xuanzang or Huansang जो हम बोलते हैं. Huansang came to India when Harshvardhan was ruler. And when he came to India, while coming to India, he writes in his diaries that all of the great scholars of the world, they go to India to acquire knowledge. So जो इंडिया का soft power है, that was very powerful at this point of time. And it was not because that Indian rulers invaded other regions. जो Indian spread of Indian ideas हैं, which is now found in Central Asia, definitely in Afghanistan region, even in the region of China, Japan, and South Korea. This was not because of some sort of invasion. This actually occurred mostly because of traders. The traders who often roamed around into different parts of the world, and they were very much integral to spreading those ideas to rest of the world. Ashoka tried to do that with missionaries, but more than Ashoka, it was Kushanas, and it was during Gupta period, and travelers coming to India. Because of that, all of the subcontinent ideas which originated into India, became very much part of different parts of the world. तो जो इंडिया का सॉफ्ट पावर है दैट वाज आल्सो वेरी पावरफुल एट दिस पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम एंड इट वाज clearly one of the most prosperous kingdom, prosperous region of the world, not one of the. इकोनॉमिस्ट एक बहुत फेमस मैगजीन है द इकोनॉमिस्ट. इकोनॉमिस्ट ने आज से कुछ साल पहले एक अपना स्टडी किया था वेयर दे ट्राइड टू असाइन द जीडीपी ऑफ द वर्ल्ड बाय रीजन. And they started this study from 1st century AD and they did this till 18th century AD कि हिस्ट्री में जीडीपी का कंट्रीब्यूशन अलग अलग रीजन्स का क्या होगा. सो इन दिस 17-18 years जो इंडिया है इट वाज एट द फर्स्ट अराउंड 14 or 15 time. Only 2 or 3 times China was on the top. So either it was India or China, but India was every time India's economy, India's GDP contribution to the world was the highest, and it was the highest during Gupta period, right? So first thing first, let's talk about the sources to know about Gupta period. So give this heading sources. अब गुप्ता पीरियड के साथ बेस्ट चीज ये है that so much of literature development occurred during Gupta period कि हमारे पास sources का कोई कमी नहीं है. जो literary sources हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा हैं, and many lot of important literary source is important for in general for your prelims and mains examination. So let's first talk about literary sources. A lot of Puranas, for example, Narad Puran, Brihaspati Puran, Vayu Puran, Matsya Puran, all of these Puranas were compiled during Gupta period. Guptas were great patron of Hinduism. They also patronized other religion, but they were mainly patron of Hinduism. Because of that, lot of Puranas talk about different rulers, their proper lineage, their contribution to religion, and because Puranas fundamentally involve stories, so even though these stories are mythological in nature, but these stories are written into a particular social setup. So these stories will tell you that what type of society we are talking about. जब तक हमारे पास बिल्कुल कोई फिक्स्ड हिस्ट्री का रिटन वर्क नहीं हो, तब तक आपके पास ये जो सोर्सेज होंगे, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल इन दिस केस पुरानास, वी विल हैव टू यूज देम टू डिसाइफर व्हाट टाइप ऑफ सेटअप वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट. ये हमने फर्स्ट क्लास में भी डिस्कस किया था दैट द वेरी फर्स्ट टेक्स्ट बुक from India, which can be considered as a textbook of history, that will be Raj Tarangini. And that was written in 10th or 11th century AD. इससे पहले जो भी चीज़ें हैं, जो भी टेक्स्ट बुक हैं, these are not textbooks of history. These are stories, these are novels, these are poems, great poems, some of the greatest poetry. These are religious textbooks, and now it is the job of historians to find information relevant for the history textbooks, that what type of setup we are talking about. So lot of Puranas and lot of, in fact, religious scriptures were given their final form, including, for example, the two greatest epics Ramayana and Mahabharata during Gupta period. जो रामायण महाभारत का जो फाइनल फॉर्म जो अभी हम पढ़ते हैं, that actually may have occurred during Gupta period, along with compilation of all of these Puranas. Then another very famous book is a great author named Katyayan. Katyayan writes about again statecraft, and writes not just statecraft. He mainly focuses upon social setup, about religious setup, roles and responsibilities of various stakeholders in the society. So to know more about society, जो Katyayana Smritis हैं, they're very important. They are very, very important, especially to know about the status of women in the society. Katyayana Smritis are very, very important. Then there is another very famous book called Niti Sar. Written by Kamandak. Now this book is directly addressed to the king, where the author is requesting king to follow certain sets of rules and regulations. Again, it is asking king to perform his duties. And what type of duties जो हैं, they tell you what type of political setup we are talking about. So often this book is compared with Arthashastra. However, Arthashastra जो है, it is a much more than simple address to king. Arthashastra talks about many aspects simultaneously, जो हमने previous classes में discuss किया है. जो नीति सार book है, that is mostly dedicated to king, that what will be the responsibilities of king as such. Then there is a very, very famous book Mudra Rakshas, Devi Chandraguptam, written by Vishakha Dutt. तो देखो मुद्रा राक्षस की जो कहानी है वो ऑलरेडी हम डिस्कस कर चुके हैं. मुद्रा राक्षस का जो कहानी है दैट इज नॉट अबाउट एनी ऑफ द गुप्ता रूलर्स, दैट इज अबाउट एक्चुअली चंद्रगुप्त मौर्य. सो जो मुद्रा राक्षस का जो मेन प्लॉट वो ये है. द फर्स्ट पार्ट ऑफ दिस स्टोरी टेल्स यू दैट हाउ आफ्टर ट्रेनिंग फ्रॉम चाणक्य Chandragupta Maurya becomes the ruler of Magad. The second part of this story, which is the main plot of the entire book, is that one of the minister of Dhananand, his name is Rakshas, and he continuously plots to kill Chandragupta Maurya. But he always gets outwitted by Chanakya. Chanakya always and always finds his plot and defeats him. But Chanakya also does not get him arrested or killed because he considers Rakshas to be a worthy person. And finally, at the end of book, he meets Rakshas and he persuades him that you have to work for Chandragupta Maurya, which he obliges, which he accepts. So this is the main plot of Mudra Rakshas. So Mudra Rakshas is not about any of the Gupta ruler, that is about Chandragupta Maurya. But again, because it was written during Gupta period, the type of political setup, it can be assumed that it was very similar to Gupta kingdom. But the Devi Chandraguptam story here, now that is a very interesting story. And for most of the time historians thought that ये fictional story है. देवी चंद्रगुप्तम का जो main character है वो चंद्रगुप्त II है, of Gupta ruler. He is also called Vikramaditya. I'm going to talk about him. But Chandragupta II का जो story कुछ इस तरीके से देवी चंद्रगुप्तम में, that after Samudragupta, so there are, let me tell you about the early rulers of Gupta king. The first is Sri Gupta, second is Ghatotkach. But Sri Gupta and Ghatotkach are kings. They ruled over a smaller region. The first emperor which ruled over a much larger region is Chandragupta I. Chandragupta I's son becomes Samudragupta. He is perhaps the greatest conqueror of ancient India. He becomes the next ruler. And history textbooks आपको ये बोलेंगे, most of the history textbooks will tell you that Samudragupta के बाद Chandragupta II becomes the next ruler, who is also called Vikramaditya. Chandragupta II is considered again the greatest ruler of Gupta Empire, along with Samudragupta, because of the extent, because of the prosperity, all of those things. But Devi Chandraguptam का जो कहानी है वो ये है that even before Chandragupta II, there was another ruler called Ramagupta. And Ramgupta ruled over, he became the next ruler of Gupta Empire. He was son of Samudragupta. But Ramgupta was a coward. So when Guptas were ruling over Patliputra, Shakas of Gujarat were still very powerful. So the main plot is that Shakas now have attacked Patliputra and they have demanded Ramgupta that if you want this attack to stop, then you have to send your wife to Shaka ruler. And Ramgupta finally obliges to that, accepts this demand, despite the fact that it is shameful uh, demand, shameful act, but he does accept it as this story goes. So now Chandragupta II is not the ruler, he is one of the brothers of Ramgupta. Chandragupta II takes the form of a woman, enters into the enemy camp, kills the king, rescues the queen, and comes back. After this, Ramgupta very much knows that Chandragupta II is a clear threat. He has a lot of respect. People are not going to respect me. So Ramgupta tries to plot to kill him, but finally Chandragupta II emerges victorious. He kills Ramgupta and he becomes the next ruler. अब ये स्टोरी कितना ट्रू है ये किसी को नहीं पता that what how much extent of this story is true. In fact, people thought that there was no Ramgupta as such. Why people thought it? कि जो भी epigraphical inscriptions होंगे वहां पे क्या होगा कि kings whenever they inscribed onto inscriptions they talked about their entire lineage. But lineage में kings did not talk about their uncles. What it means is that Chandragupta II का father जो है समुद्रगुप्त है and Chandragupta II के जो फिर sons होंगे they are going to write about Chandragupta II and Samudragupta, they will not write about Ramgupta. This was a very standard practice that जो uncles हैं who may have become rulers, they will not be written. It will be grandfather, father, and so on and so forth. So Ramgupta is not mentioned in any of the Gupta inscriptions. Because of that, historians thought that this is actually just a fictional story. कोई character था नहीं. But now we have actually found sculptures where the name Ramgupta is written and the term Maharaja Dhiraj is also written. So now many historians actually do think that there was a ruler called Ramgupta who may have ruled for a very small period between Chandragupta II and Samudragupta. But nonetheless, that does not mean कि जो देवी चंद्रगुप्तम का story है वो कोई true historic story है. But इससे we do know get to know about this character called Ramgupta. So anyways, these are two very famous books, Mudra Rakshas and Devi Chandraguptam, written by Vishakha Dutt. All of the work of Kalidas. Kalidas was one of the Nauratnas of Chandragupta II. Kalidas has written so many things. Meghadutam, Raghuvansham, Abhigyan Sakuntalam. Many of these books are romantic works. Ritu Samhar, Kumar Sambhavam. There are so many books written by Kalidas. Kalidas has been compared with Shakespeare of India, which is not a correct comparison because Kalidas lived many, many years before Shakespeare. So, if anything, Shakespeare can be considered Kalidas of West. But because history writing was monopolized by Western historians initially, तो जो भी नाम है, they used their own heroes or their own characters and they compared that with characters of India. So that is why it becomes, it's a very famous thing that Shakespeare of India, Kalidas. Kalidas was one of the Nauratnas. The concept of Nauratna was, it became very popular. It originated into Greeks. In fact, it may have been part of Persian kingdom. Definitely Greeks used it. Alexander had 9 very important people into his court. And from there, this concept continued. So one of the Nauratnas of Chandragupta II was Kalidas. Kalidas का story खुद में बड़ा interesting है. There is a story about that how he was not a very well-read person. In fact, for all whatever information we do know that in his initial life he may have been actually completely a stupid person also, that he did not know anything, he did not hasn't read any textbook, something like that. There was a princess who had some sort of uh, uh, some sort of arrangement, that she had asked his father that she's only going to marry that person who can defeat her into Shastrarth. Shastrarth was debate about religion, philosophy, etc. So she was able to, her name was Vidyotama. She was able to defeat lot of scholars. And these scholars, as a revenge, plotted. What was that plot? This is very complicated. But as part of this plot, Vidyotama got married to Kalidas, who was stupid. So Vidyotama finally asked few questions from Kalidas. She asked meaning of three words. Kalidas did not know anything. So Vidyotama refused, did not acknowledge this marriage. Kalidas took this ego on his ego, and he worked really, really hard. He went to some of the greatest libraries at this point of time, and he worked really hard. And because of that, now he was able to write all of these greatest epics in Sanskrit literature. The story continues that he actually goes back to his wife, who is now willing to accept him, but now he rejects her. He does not want anything to do with her. The story further continues. I do not have to go into that. But nonetheless, जो कालिदास का work है, all of this work is, most of it is romantic literature. Meghdut is definitely romantic literature, where, as the name suggests, couple is sending messages to each other with the help of clouds. Literally, जो नाम है वो मेघदूतम है. Raghuvansham talks about the story of Raghuvansh, which Ram belonged to. Abhigyan Shakuntalam is the story of Shakuntala. जो पूरा story of Bharat जो है, Dushyant, Bharat and Shakuntala, that is the main plot of Abhigyan Shakuntalam. There are many more books, Kumar Sambhavam or Ritu Sambhar. Then there is another very famous book called Mrich Katika. This is written by a person named Shudrak. अब ये एक बहुत interesting book देखो इसलिए, because Shudrak in his book considers himself to be a king, but which kingdom, that is not very clear. Which timeline, also that is not very clear. Shudrak may have lived into 3rd century. He may have been either contemporary of Chandragupta I or even before than before Chandragupta I. So Mrich Katika hai, it literally translates into a small vehicle, a toy vehicle made of clay. So literally Mrich Katika ka matlab ye hoga that a toy vehicle made of clay. It's a very famous drama, a great drama, which talks about the political conditions of Gupta period. It has love stories also. There is a political plot also, political conspiracy also. And this book has been part of popular imagination in literature all across the world. Many people have made movies. I'm not talking about in India, but even in Hollywood, people have made movies as plot of Mrich Katika. Then you have Fahiyan. Chinese traveler Fahian, who visited India during the reign of Chandragupta II. In fact, even later Chinese travelers such as Huansang or Ai Zing, who did not visit during Gupta period, but they write about Gupta period. They write about the prosperity of India during Gupta period. Or we can also have one more source, by the way, which is, this book is often known for very various other things, but the Kama Sutra book hai, that also talks about gender relation. Now we do not have to pretend what this book is all about, but one of the plot of book is, or one of the major theme of the book is, that it talks about gender relations, that what will be the responsibilities of male and female member. So it does talk about, Kama Sutra does talk about the society in general. So a lot of historians also use this textbook written by Vatsyayan, and they do use this textbook to know about gender relationship. We can keep adding lots and lots of names here. गुप्ता पीरियड में लिटरेचर का कोई डार्थ नहीं है, बहुत सारे सोर्सेज हैं. historians का job होगा that how to utilize those sources and get information. But you also have epigraphy. Epigraphy is a very important source to know about Gupta period, because Guptas were emperors, not just small kings, they were emperors. They often inscribed a lot about their achievement. जो सबसे famous epigraphy है यहाँ पे, it's called Prayag Prashasti. So Prashasti hai, these were basically written in the praise of a particular king by their court poet. So the Prayag Prashasti hai, that was written by Hari Sen. This is in Prayagraj, Allahabad. And it is very interesting that this Prashasti is written on the same pillar where Ashoka also writes about his message to jo Dhamma, Ashoka ke Dhamma ideas. So one of the minor pillars, Ashokan minor pillar, exists in Prayagraj, what was Allahabad, or what was Prayagraj before that. So jo Prayag Prashasti hai, this is written by Hari Sen, court poet of Samudragupta. Court poet of Samudragupta. This is written in Sanskrit. This Prashasti talks about the character of Samudragupta, his conquest, and his interests. So Samudragupta, as per this Prashasti, is a restless conqueror. That throughout his life, he attacked different kingdoms, and he adopted different type of policies for different type of kingdom. For example, in north, in northwest, in region of Punjab region, he often defeated and assimilated those kingdoms as part of Magad. However, in Deccan, in south, he adopted a different policy. He defeated them, but then gave them their kingdom back. They just have to accept his authority. They do not have to do anything else. They just have to accept Samudragupta as the emperor, and that's it. Their kingdom was given back to them. So this is also a policy adopted, which is mentioned in this Prashasti itself. But this Prashasti also talks about his personal character, what type of person he is, what type of ruler he is, and he is considered to be a very generous ruler. His kingdom is considered to be a very prosperous kingdom. And last but not the least, that there are a lot of personal attributes given to him. For example, he is considered to be a great artist also. He is a poet. He also plays Veena. All of those things are attributed to Samudragupta as part of Prayag Prashasti. So that is a very famous Prashasti. Second is आप कभी कुतुब मीनार घूमने जाओगे तो apart from Qutub Minar, definitely look for this iron pillar inscription, Mehrauli iron pillar inscription. This is achievements of Chandragupta II. There are many interesting stories about this iron pillar. Do you know how Delhi got its name? Delhi का नाम है. Delhi was Hastinapur or Indraprasth. Hastinapur was perhaps Meerut, but Indraprasth was Delhi. In जो later Vedic या early Vedic literature जो Indraprasth नाम है, that is what modern Delhi is. Hastinapur may have been Meerut, as historians think. Now, Mehrauli iron pillar inscription, how this name Delhi comes into existence, there is a very interesting mythical story about it, that it became very famous. So, in medieval period, especially in early medieval period, Delhi was inhabited by Tomars. Tomars were one of the Rajput clans. So, the founder of Tomar clan was Anangpal Tomar. And Anangpal Tomar came across this inscription, this pillar, and he got intrigued by it. So his advisors told him that this pillar is actually supported by Sheshnag himself. जो पूरा mythological story है that earth is carried by Sheshnag who lives in Patal, basically at the mid of some midway somewhere on the earth. So this pillar is actually rested on the back of Sheshnag. He got more intrigued. He started digging of this pillar. By the way, again, this is only a mythical story. इसका कोई historical basis नहीं है. He started digging this pillar. After some time, he started finding red soil. Now he got scared because he thought that this is blood of Sheshnag. So because of that, he started putting all of the soil back of this pillar. But nonetheless, जो pillar का जो original strength था, that he was not able to achieve. Despite all of this soil, this pillar remained what we called dhili, and from there the word became dhillika. Dhili simply means that pillar still remained loose, and from there the word became dhillika, and from dhillika it became Delhi in the time. So the story of how Delhi got this name Delhi goes back to Tomar clan and goes back to this iron pillar inscription of Mehrauli. Then you have another very famous inscription, the same inscription of Rudradaman. जूनागढ़ inscription. ये जो inscription है, this is achievement of स्कंदगुप्त. अब ये important इसलिए है because जैसे जो रामगुप्त का जो story है, that रामगुप्त is not part of normal lineage in inscriptions. Same is true for Skandgupt. Skandgupt son did not become ruler. Because of that, in later Gupta rulers का जो lineage है, whenever they got inscribed, they do not mention Skandgupt. So with the finding of Junagadh inscription, people got to know that there was a ruler called Skandgupt also, who can be, by the way, considered as the last great Gupta ruler. So these are some of the inscriptions. And finally, you also have archaeology, and you definitely have numismatics. So the first great king of Gupta dynasty can be considered to be Chandragupta I, who is not the founder, by the way. It should be very clear, Chandragupta I is not the founder of Gupta dynasty. Chandragupta Maurya is founder of Maurya dynasty, but Chandragupta I is not the founder of Gupta dynasty. Chandragupta I may have ruled over this entire region, which included regions of UP, modern Bihar, Jharkhand, some part of Odisha also. And he took the title of Maharaja Dhiraj. He became the first emperor of the dynasty. This was further expanded by Samudragupta, who occupied a lot of territory, but he also started a campaign. That is why in lot of textbooks aap padhoge that in Gupta Empire they will include this region also. But why this is not in this map? This is a more authentic map because for all practical purposes, the rulers were defeated as per Prayag Prashasti. That Samudragupta started a campaign to south. He went as far as Kanchi, where he defeated Pallava rulers. I'm going to talk about Pallavas in next class. He defeated Pallava rulers, but he gave all the kingdom back. He did not need to defeat rulers of Deccan region. These rulers were called Vaktaks, but Vaktaks were allies of Gupta. So he did not need to defeat as such rulers of Deccan region. So that is why in a lot of maps you will find the map of Samudragupta including all of this region, but that will not be very authentic map because this conquest does not mean that this entire region was annexed by Samudragupta. And also, जो Vaktaks हैं, they were allies of Gupta. That does not mean that they were part of Gupta Empire. So that is why this is a more authentic map of Gupta Empire. And by the way, जो Chandragupta II है, under which the Gupta Empire reached its zenith, now he defeated Shakas in Gujarat and he also occupied this entire region of northwest frontier. So this was perhaps the second political unification of India, with again few exceptions, smaller than Ashokan Empire, but definitely it was a political unification of major part of India. So just you can write down few things here. Guptas may have been feudatories of Kushanas. Guptas may have been feudatories of Kushanas. Kushanas. The Gupta period in ancient India. The Gupta period in ancient India. In ancient India is referred as is referred as the golden age golden age because of achievements in because of achievements in the field of arts, achievement in the field of arts, literature, literature, science and technology, science and technology. The founder of the dynasty was Sri Gupta. The founder of the dynasty was Sri Gupta. Sri Gupta, who used the title Maharaja, who used the title Maharaja. His son, his son Ghatotkach, his son Ghatotkach became the next ruler, became the next ruler. अब एक लाइन इसमें पक्के से ऐड कर लेना. Guptas are considered, Gupta rulers are considered to be Vaishyas. Gupta rulers are considered to be Vaishyas. Vaishyas because of their surname. Because of their surname. Again, I will repeat. जो fundamental logic ये है that some Dharma Sutras talk about Sharman, Varman, Gupta, and Das as the surname of different four Varnas, even though some historians do contend that were they really Vaishyas. Write down the next bullet point. The first emperor, the first emperor of the dynasty can be considered, the first emperor of the dynasty can be considered to be Chandragupta I. Chandragupta I. Chandragupta I. He was son of Ghatotkach. He was son of Ghatotkach, who strengthened his position, who strengthened his position by a matrimonial alliance, by a matrimonial alliance with Lichavi princess Kumar Devi, with Lichavi princess Kumar Devi. Kumar Devi. Historians actually think that this marriage may have been because that they were Vaishya, they wanted to establish They wanted to gain more authority, and that is why marrying a Kshatriya princess was important. इसमें एक और, this also tells you one more thing, that even though Lichvis had very much declined many years before, but still they were very popular. Lichvis, last time we have talked about Lichvis during Mahajanpad era. उसके बाद हमने कभी भी लिचवीज के बारे में बात नहीं करी है. महाजनपद एरा के टाइम में लिचवीज जो है बहुत पावरफुल थे. वैशाली जो है, वी हैव टॉक्ड अबाउट द ग्लोरी ऑफ एंशिएंट वैशाली, which was defeated by Magad, integrated into Magad Mahajanpad. But nonetheless, they were popular enough, or their name was big enough, that Lichvi princess was married to Chandragupta I. आप लिख सकते हो in next point. He issued coins. He issued coins in the joint names of in the joint names of his queen and himself, his queen and himself. For example, this is very famous gold coin issued by Chandragupta I, where both king and queen are pictured together. These two are coins issued by Samudragupta, and Samudragupta के जो coins हैं, for example, carrying either a veena, some sort of instrument, or as well as his conquest pose, both of those things, that he had love for both art as well as war, conquest, both are simultaneously depicted as part of Samudragupta coin. Give the next heading. Samudragupta. Samudragupta. One more thing you can add. Chandragupta I took the title of Maharaja Dhiraj. Just you can add one line. Chandragupta I took the title of Maharaja Dhiraj. Maharaja Dhiraj. So Samudragupta ruled from 335 to 375 AD. Write down, as per Prayag Prashasti. As per Prayag Prashasti, he was a restless conqueror. As per Prayag Prashasti, he was a restless conqueror who never lost a war. Who never lost a war. He consolidated Gupta's position. Consolidated Gupta's position in Ganga Yamuna Doab. Ganga Yamuna Doab. Ganga Yamuna Doab. Eastern Himalayan states. Eastern Himalayan states. Himalayan states. Central India. Write down one more line. He also started a campaign towards Deccan and South. He also started a campaign towards Deccan and South. And went as far as Kanchi and defeated Pallava ruler. Went as far as Kanchi and defeated Pallava ruler. Defeated Pallava ruler. His policy in South is called, his policy in South is called Grahan Moksh Anugrah. Grahan Moksh Anugrah, which means he returned the kingdom back to defeated kingdoms. He returned the kingdom back to defeated kingdoms. Defeated kingdoms. And these states acknowledged his supremacy. These states acknowledged his supremacy. ग्रहण का मतलब होगा that you have conquered. मोक्ष आपने लिबरेट कर दिया as part of your अनुग्रह. तो ग्रहण मोक्ष अनुग्रह जो है वहां से ग्रहण का मतलब होगा conquering the territory but liberating the territory, hence the word moksha as part of your policy. Write down the next bullet point. According to Chinese sources, according to Chinese sources, ruler of Sri Lanka Meghvarman, ruler of Sri Lanka Meghvarman sent a missionary to Samudragupta, sent a missionary to Samudragupta, to Samudragupta to build a Buddhist temple at Bodh Gaya. Ruler of Sri Lanka Meghvarman sent a missionary to Samudragupta to build a temple at Bodh Gaya, which was granted. Granted. Write down next point. After conquering territories, after conquering territories, he celebrated by performing Ashwamedh, by performing Ashwamedh and issued coins with the legend Restorer of Ashwamedh. Issued coins with the legend Restorer of Ashwamedh. आप एक और लाइन ऐड कर सकते हो. As per प्रयाग प्रशस्ति, as per प्रयाग प्रशस्ति, he was a Kaviraj. He was a Kaviraj. Kaviraj basically means even among poets, the greatest poet. He was Kaviraj. अब ब्रैकेट में लिख लेना great poet and skilled in Veena, skilled in Veena. He was an ardent follower of Vaishnavism. He was an ardent follower of Vaishnavism. He was an ardent follower of Vaishnavism, but tolerant of other religions. Tolerant of other religions. His coins include various titles such as Apratirath. Apratirath simply means who has never been forced to come out of his chariot. So invincible. Apratirath simply means invincible. Apratirath. Vyagra Parakrama. As brave as a tiger. Vyagra Parakrama. Write down next paragraph. After his death, after his death, Ramgupta may have ruled for some time. Ramgupta may have ruled for some time. He is one of the characters in Devi Chandraguptam. He is one of the figures. He is one of the figures in Devi Chandraguptam. Devi Chandraguptam. However, his historicity was debatable. His historicity was debatable. But nonetheless, however, at the same time, I should tell you that we have found inscriptions, certain statues, which talk about a ruler named Ramgupta, and they also give the title Maharaja Dhiraj. Maharaja Dhiraj was only taken a title by emperors. जैसे श्रीगुप्त took the title of Maharaja, but Chandragupta one took the title of Maharaja Dhiraj. तो टाइटल से भी वो क्लियरली पता चलता है कि what type of ruler we are talking about. So son of Samudragupta, there is a chance that he may have been he actually may have ruled for some time. But give the next heading, Chandragupta II or Vikramaditya. Chandragupta II. We adopted this title of Vikramaditya. We have talked about this, that Vikramaditya may have been a ruler from ancient India, even before Guptas, a ruler from Ujjain who had defeated Shaka ruler, and he took this title of Vikramaditya and started this calendar Vikram Sambat. ये हमने डिस्कस किया है previous classes में. So because of that, Vikramaditya became a very coveted title. So many rulers from ancient India took this title of Vikramaditya after defeating some great enemy. In fact, even in medieval India, think about Hemu, second battle of Panipat jo hai. Now Hemu was a Hindu commander who was leading Afghan forces against Mughals in second battle of Panipat, and he took this title of Hemchandra Vikramaditya when he had defeated Mughals earlier. Right, so Vikramaditya was a very coveted title in ancient India, but also we do find references in medieval India. Now Chandragupta II is considered that during his reign, the Gupta Empire hai, that reached its zenith, which by the way was continued by his son Kumargupta as well as by Skandgupta. But after that, Gupta Empire started declining. वो भी हम discuss करेंगे why it happened. But why we consider this to be zenith? Because the greatest foe, the greatest enemy Gupta faced was Shakas of Gujarat, who have now ruled Gujarat for more than 300 years. Right? They have, even though at one point of time their authority was challenged by Satvahanas, and because of that Shakas actually declined, but nonetheless Satvahanas finally declined and Shakas were still very much powerful into the region of Gujarat. So finally Shakas were defeated with the help of Vaktaks. Vaktaks and Guptas allied. Vaktaks were ruler of Deccan region. Vaktaks and Guptas allied and they defeated Shakas, and this more than 300-year rule ended. After this, he took the title of Vikramaditya. He also made Ujjain his second capital. So Patliputra was the original capital of Guptas, but Ujjain became their second capital, which was called Ujjaini. And in his Ujjain court, great 9 scholars existed who were called Nauratnas. तो जो Nauratnas है, जो Nauratna का पूरा tradition है, that goes back to, in India, that goes back to Chandragupta II, also known as Vikramaditya. You can write down few things. The Gupta Empire, the Gupta Empire reached its zenith, during Chandragupta II, He may have ruled from, by the way, 376 AD to either 413 or 415 AD. Reached its zenith during Chandragupta II. He married a Naga princess. He married a Naga princess, Kuberan Naga, Kuberan Naga, and had a daughter, Prabhavati. Had a daughter, Prabhavati. Prabhavati was married to, write down, Prabhavati was married to, Prabhavati was married to Vaktak prince. वाक्टक का जो टेरिटरी है दिस वाज सेम एज सातवाहनास. सो वाक्टक प्रिंस आप लिख सकते हो, रूलर्स ऑफ डेक्कन. Prabhavati was married to Vaktak prince Rudrasen II. Rudrasen II. However, Rudrasen died. Rudrasen died, and Prabhavati became regent queen. Prabhavati became regent queen. Regent queen का क्या मतलब होता है? What is the meaning of regent ruler? Ruling with a minor, ruling on someone else's behalf. That you have a minor son and you are ruling on behalf. For example, again going back to medieval India, Akbar did not become emperor in his initial ages. Baram Khan was the ruler, regent ruler, and Akbar, he was ruling on the behalf of Akbar. So similarly, Prabhavati was ruling on the behalf of her sons, regent queen, but because she was also daughter of Chandragupta II, Chandragupta now Gupta already allies hai, Gupta's Vaktaks already allies hai, but that interest further allied, and now with the help of Vaktaks, Shakas were attacked. आप लिख सकते हो Chandragupta II with the help of Vaktaks, with the help of Vaktaks conquered Gujarat and Western Malwa, conquered Gujarat and Western Malwa, Western Malwa, which was under the rule of Shakas, which was under the rule of Shakas for centuries. For centuries. He adopted the title Vikramaditya and Simha Vikram. He adopted the title Vikramaditya and Simha Vikram. Simha Vikram, and made Ujjain his second capital. This was called Ujjaini. Made Ujjain his second capital. During his reign, Chinese traveler Fahian visited India. During his reign, Chinese traveler Fahian visited India. And one last point you can add here, his court at Ujjain was adorned by nine scholars, known as Navratnas. 9 scholars known as Navratnas. So by the way, one thing which I forgot to discuss, that Samudragupta in early history textbooks, he has been compared with Napoleon because of his conquest policy. So often Samudragupta is called Napoleon of India. Again, that is also not the right comparison because again, Western bias, and Napoleon actually lost his final wars and he spent last of his life into jail. Samudragupta, as per Prashasti, never lost a single war. Anyways, Navratnas, the very first is Kalidas. All the books we have discussed. अमर सिम्हा, आप एक लाइन में लिख सकते हो. He wrote Amar Kosh. He wrote Amar Kosh, a, a vocabulary of Sanskrit words. A vocabulary of Sanskrit words. A vocabulary of Sanskrit words. Varahmir. Varahmir. He wrote Panch Siddhantika, Brihat Siddhantika, and Brihat Jataka. He wrote Panch Siddhantika, Brihat Siddhantika, and Brihat Jataka. People often talk about Aryabhat. Aryabhat also lived during Gupta period, by the way. But Aryabhat was not part of the 9 scholars of. Aryabhat lived before Chandragupta too. So Aryabhat did, however, live during Gupta period. But Varahamir, again, he is a very important name. He is a great astronomer. For example, his work Panch Siddhantika is actually a book about astronomy, where he talk about जो modern panchangs, for example, जो हैं, they are actually part of the system developed by Panchsiddhantika. That he writes about the position of sun and moon and how they change in the sky. Similarly, his book Brihat Samhita is a book about both astronomy and mathematics. So Brihat Jataka hai, that is a work about astrology. It's astrology is frankly not Indian in nature. Astrology came to India with Greeks, that with conquest with uh, uh, Greek contact, astrology became very popular into India. But then again, astrological traditions further developed into India. But जो बृहत सिद्धांतिका एंड बृहत पंच सिद्धांतिका जो book है, these are books about astronomy and mathematics. बृहत जातका is a book about astrology. Next, write down Dhanvantari. A great name in Ayurveda. So we have lot of names. For example, Bijak or Charak, Shushruth, Dhanvantari. So Dhanvantari was also Charak we already have talked about. Charak lived during Kushana period. Shushruth may have lived even before that, around 4th or 5th century BC. जो बीजक है, he was court physician of Bimbisar. We have talked about Bijak also. So Dhanvantari है, he was court physician of Chandragupta too. So great name in Ayurveda. Next, Shanku. Just in one line you can write. He was an architect who wrote Shilp Shastra. He was an architect who wrote Shilp Shastra. Ghat Karpar. He was an expert In sculpture and architecture, he was an expert in sculpture and architecture. Kahapanaka, he was an astrologer who wrote Jyotish Shastra. He was an astrologer who wrote Jyotish Shastra. Vararuchi, Vararuchi, he wrote Prakrit Praksha, Prakrit Praksha, a book about a book about grammar of Prakrit language. Book about grammar of Prakrit language. And last, Betal Bhatt, he was a magician who wrote Mantra Shastra. He was a magician who wrote Mantra Shastra. देखो मैंने एंशियंट इंडिया में आपको पहले क्लास में भी बताया था कि एंशियंट इंडिया और मिडिवल इंडिया आर्ट एंड कल्चर ये तीन टॉपिक्स से मिला के 12 से 15 क्वेश्चन आएंगे और ये जो तीन टॉपिक हैं फ्रैंकली मेरे हिसाब से यूपीएससी के सबसे डिफिकल्ट टॉपिक्स हैं डिफिकल्ट टॉपिक इसलिए बिकॉज दे आर वेरी फैक्चुअल यूपीएससी के पास कोई सोर्सेज की कमी है नहीं दे कैन आस्क क्वेश्चन फ्रॉम एनीवेयर दैट डज नॉट मीन दैट यू डू नॉट हैव टू स्टडी बिकॉज ये जो है ये बहुत बार डिसाइडिंग फैक्टर हो सकते हैं प्रीलिम्स क्लियर करने के लिए बिकॉज जो 12 क्वेश्चन है उसमें 6 से 7 क्वेश्चन ऐसे होंगे जो बहुत बिल्कुल ही अटेम्प्टेबल क्वेश्चंस होंगे जो आप बेसिक लेवल ऑफ स्टडी फॉर एग्जांपल जो भी हम कर रहे हैं वी कैन गेट इट करेक्ट इजीली विदाउट लॉट ऑफ गोइंग इनटू डेप्थ देयर विल बी फ्यू क्वेश्चंस जो आपको हवा भी नहीं लगने वाला है आई एम गोइंग टू बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट विथ यू देयर विल बी फ्यू क्वेश्चंस टर्म्स बेस्ड क्वेश्चन UPSC has picked it from somewhere you haven't read that book you do not know meaning of that word you can try to guess it sometimes it may work sometimes it may not work so there will be few questions जो आपको पता नहीं लगेगा but if you do the basic level of study for example what we have done lot of questions you can answer I'm not saying that all of the questions nobody can say that frankly to be very honest but lot of questions you can answer correctly and this can actually become a deciding factor because these are areas where people do not people fear it because of factual nature but the thing is that if you study all of those things together not in silos with each other this ancient medieval and how it is integrated with art and culture then you can and you divide things into timelines you talk about you analyze things with various perspective for example what type of literary development or cultural development or religious development social economic development and last but not the least what important personalities from a particular time period and important personalities are not just kings always remember that kings तो हैं important personalities but apart from that जो scholars हैं who we are talking about जो spiritual teachers हैं philosophers हैं they are also very important personality और उनका timeline clear होना चाहिए कि वो कौन से time में वो actually exist करते थे और कौन से kingdom if they were part of some kingdom you should definitely know that and UPSC का एक बड़ा favorite topic होगा UPSC prelims exam में सबसे बढ़िया बात यह है कि दे विल नॉट आस्क अ वेरी फैक्चुअल क्वेश्चन कि 1560 वर्सेस 1565 कब हुआ है दे विल नॉट आस्क अ क्वेश्चन लाइक दैट बट दे विल आस्क दैट कैन यू if there is a timeline based question that can you assign a timeline in comparative perspective जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल इन एंशियंट हिस्ट्री अभी शुरू की क्लास में मैंने एक आपको बताया दैट जो थर्ड सेंचुरी BC थर्ड सेंचुरी AD है वेयर आई डिस्कस दैट हाउ four things I can divide all of the major political events into four categories one in northwest frontier, another in North India, third in Deccan region, Central India, and fourth in Southern India. And how we can understand that all of these four things are happening simultaneously. तो इस तरीके का जो एक कंपैरेटिव पर्सपेक्टिव है दैट कैन बी वेरी हेल्पफुल इफ देर इज अ टाइमलाइन बेस्ड क्वेश्चन एंड बाकी जो पर्सनालिटी बेस्ड क्वेश्चंस होंगे वो तो यूपीएससी पूछती है. लेट्स टेक अ ब्रेक हियर. After that, we'll talk about two more rulers, Kumar Gupta and Skand Gupta. We'll talk about decline of Gupta, but more than that, we will talk about social, society, economy, and religion during Gupta period. I will give the handout. Don't worry. I have a class actually in Army 19 today. After today's class, I will give you the environment handout. Anyways, few things about Kumar Gupta you should know. For example, he is the founder of Nalanda University. Nalanda, one of the great ancient universities from India, along with Takshila and Vikramshila. But Takshila is much older than Nalanda. But Nalanda is considered as one of the greatest university when it was at its zenith, when it was at its glory. At one point of time, it had perhaps as many as 10,000 students or about 2,000 teachers. It was destroyed by Bakhtiyar Khilji, who was one of the commanders of Muhammad Ghori and worked under Qutbuddin Aibak. But Kumar Gupta, jo hai, few things about him, that founder of Nalanda University. In that sense, they are also patron of Gupta rulers, despite the fact that they are followers of Vaishnavism. They are also patrons of Buddhism because Nalanda University, jo hai, fundamentally, it was a Buddhist learning center. It was a lot of times it was also called monastery, Nalanda Monastery, because fundamentally it was a Buddhist learning center. आप लिख सकते हो, he adopted the title of Shakraditya and Mahendraditya. He adopted the title of Shakraditya and Mahendraditya. He led the foundation of Nalanda University. He led the foundation of Nalanda University. Nalanda University, which was later expanded, which was later expanded by Harshvardhan and Pala rulers. Harshvardhan and Pala rulers. Pala were rulers of Bengal in early medieval India. Even today, I had a chance to visit Nalanda, and if you go to the ruins of Nalanda, even today, the type of construction if you see, for example, Nalanda का जो wall का thickness है, that will be thickness of perhaps modern kitchens. जो अभी हम kitchen का जो thickness होता है. So the walls are so thick, and even today when you go there, you'll find that the type of bricks, there will be three different types. First was by Kumar Gupta, then by Harshvardhan, then by Pala ruler. So you can clearly see that with even with your naked eyes, that three different set of rulers further contributed to the construction of Nalanda University. So about Kumar Gupta, that is very important. One more thing you can write here is, during his reign or at the end of his reign, at the end of his reign, Hunas, Hunas, a tribe from Central Asia, tribe from Central Asia, crossed the northwest frontier, crossed the northwest frontier, northwest frontier, occupied Gandhar region, occupied Gandhar region, Gandhar region, and started making inroads towards India, started making inroads towards India. यहाँ पे एक बहुत interesting historic fact which I'm going to discuss here is a group of people who we call them Huns. Huns जो है they were group of tribes, great warriors, very skilled horsemen, and Huns originated into Central Asia. Surprisingly, compared to Gupta Empire, another contemporary empire of the world is Roman Empire. Greeks declined, Greeks were substituted by Roman Empire. Roman Empire का जो remnant होगा वो अभी इटली है. जो इटली रोम लिटरली जो कैपिटल इटली का है वो रोम है. Roman Empire was consolidated by Julius Caesar, but he was not able to rule very long. He was assassinated. Augustus became the first great empire of Roman Empire in 1st century AD. Roman Empire remained continuous for many years, and almost simultaneously, the same group of people, Huns, who started attacking India, they also started attacking Rome. So Hun invasion was responsible for both decline of Gupta Empire as well as decline of Roman Empire. Same group of people, same group of tribes who led to this two set of invasion, and the timing is also not very different from each other. This is just a very great coincidence that Gupta Empire started declining by 6th century AD, so did Roman Empire. Although final disintegration of Roman Empire went up to 9th 10th century AD, but जो पूरा might of Roman Empire है, that was gone by 6th century AD, and it mainly occurred because of Hun invasion. That is also true in case of India. Huns destroyed so many of things that all this glory which we have talked about in very small amount of time, that glory was done away with. Two Hun rulers which you have to remember the names. First is Tormana and his son called Meherkul. Now, initial Hun invasion was actually thwarted by a Skandgupt, who was prince at this point of time. Next ruler, Skandgupt became. So, as long as Skandgupt was the ruler, he was not able to allow Hunas to enter into further into Gupta territory. They did occupy Punjab, they did occupy some parts of Kashmir, but they couldn't enter into the region of Ganga Yamuna Doab, जो पूरा area है. However, जो later rulers हैं, they were not very powerful enough. This continuous invasion, it made a dent to the Gupta's treasury, so economy got depleted. बाकी के जो feudatories हैं उनके अपने खुद के ambitions थे, so they started defecting from the centralized Gupta Empire, and Gupta already is facing Huna invasion. They do not have lot of power as such to take care of such type of defection. So the later Gupta rulers and their rule was no longer pan-Indian empire or pan-Indian north central northwest India. It was now limited to North India only, small part of North India only. Later Huna invasion, that was actually thwarted not by Gupta rulers but by Malwa ruler. For example, there is one ruler which emerges जिसका नाम सबसे ज़्यादा आपको मिलेगा हिस्ट्री टेक्स्ट बुक में, is Yashodharman, who was a king of Malwa. Yashodharman did not rule Malwa for very long, but he played a crucial role in final defeat of Mehirkul, who was causing lot of destruction in the northwest frontier. After that, Yashodharman did not remain part of Gupta Empire. He defected, he became independent, and that was followed by many other feudatory rulers of Gupta administration. So, जो पूरा period of 8th to 12th century है, that period is often called period of decadence or decline. That where such type of सबसे पहले जो central empire exist, just one attempt which did occur was by Harshvardhan. But nonetheless, that also was a very short-lived kingdom, only for 40-45 years, not for very long. After that, you have only smaller rulers and there was no consolidation. And that is why the later invasion, when Turkey started invading, when Turks started attacking India, there was not as such any centralized authority to take care of such type of invasion. So the Gupta Empire has decline of, जो Gupta Empire का decline है, an emergence of Harshvardhan and then decline of Harshvardhan, that in a way marks the end of ancient India. And it is not because of the political development just, it is also because of social and economic development. But yes, mostly it is political development, that you have now fragmented polity, you have local rulers here and there with no centralized authority as such. So Huna invasion, which actually became a very important cause of Gupta decline, that started during the end of Kumar Gupta period. तो आप ये लिख सकते हो. सॉरी क्या लिखा था आपने, लास्ट लाइन क्या था? Towards India. The initial attacks, the initial attacks were thwarted by Prince Skandgupta. Prince Skandgupta, who became the next ruler, who became the next ruler. Skandgupta also adopted the title of Vikramaditya. Skandgupta also adopted the title of Vikramaditya. After his death, after his death, his successors, his successors could not save the Gupta Empire, could not save the Gupta Empire, and it gradually declined and disappeared. It gradually declined and disappeared. Disappeared. Give this heading: Decline of Gupta Empire. Very first is Hun invasion. Hun invasion. Right on here. Huns were excellent horsemen. Excellent horsemen. And persistent in their attack. Persistent in their attack. In their attack. By 5th century, Hun chief Tormana, Hun chief Tormana had occupied Punjab, Kashmir, Punjab, Kashmir, parts of Rajasthan and Malwa, and Malwa. Tormana was succeeded by his son Mihir Kul. Tormana was succeeded by his son Mihir Kul. Mihir Kul. Mihir Kul, this is, he is considered as a tyrant ruler in so many textbooks. The Mihir Kul, for example, in Raj Tarangini is written as he was a tyrant ruler. In many Buddhist textbooks, it is mentioned that he destroyed a lot of Buddhist monasteries. There are stories regarding this, that why this may have occurred. Initially, he wanted to favor Buddhism, but somehow, because of some sort of insult, he became enemy of Buddhism. So that is mentioned into some Buddhist textbooks. Raj Tarangani also mentions the same thing. आप लिख सकते हो Mihir Kul was a tyrant ruler, was a tyrant ruler. He was overthrown. He was overthrown by an alliance, by an alliance which included Yashodharman of Malwa, Yashodharman of Malwa, Narsimhagupt, Narsimhagupt of Gupta kingdom, Narsimhagupt Narsimhagupta of Gupta kingdom, and Mokharis. Mokharis. Yashodharman declared his independence. Yashodharman declared his independence. Second reason is rise of feudatories. Rise of feudatories. आप लिख सकते हो after Yashodharman, many other rulers, many other rulers such as Pushyabhutis of Thanishar, Pushyabhutis of Thanishar, Mokharis of Kannauj, Mokharis of Kannauj, and Maitrikas of Vallabhi. Vallabhi was a kingdom in Gujarat. Maitrikas of Vallabhi, along with others, declared their independence. Along with others, declared their independence. Economic decline. इसमें बस एक लाइन आप लिख सकते हो. By the end of 5th century, by the end of 5th century, end of 5th century, the revenues from trade declined. The revenues from trade declined as Guptas lost Western India. Guptas lost Western India. In fact, later Gupta rulers did not issue gold coins. Did not issue gold coins in very large number. In very large number. In very large number. After Kumar Gupta and Skand Gupta, you do not find a lot of gold coins. Most of the coins are now copper coins or silver coins. For example, these are coins issued by Chandragupta II. This is Prayag Prashasti, the same pillar where you have Ashokan inscription. On the same pillar, you also have this poem written by Hari Sen, and this poem talks about the conquest of Samudragupta as well as his personal attributes, his personal character. So decline of Guptas, that now led to many smaller kingdoms. Guptas did rule for some time. They are often called later Guptas into region of Magad. But the Pushyabhutis hain, there is a place in Haryana called Thanesar. Pushyabhutis belong to this place, Thanesar. You also had Mokharis, you had Maitrikas, and in Deccan and South you have now Chalukyas, Pallavas, and Pandyas. Cheras did not play that many important role. In Deccan and South, the two सबसे important players which did emerge by 6th century, 7th century AD, they are Pallavas and Chalukyas. We will talk about them in next class. But many smaller kingdoms emerged. In Assam, for example, you had Varman dynasty, which is also mentioned in Prayag Prashasti. So Assam पहली बार जो वर्मन डायनेस्टी का जो मेंशन है, दैट गोज टू प्रयाग प्रशस्ति, वेयर समुद्रगुप्त हैज डिफीटेड one of the Varman rulers. The same set of rulers also allied with the greatest king of Pushyabhuti. His name was Harshvardhan, and he defeated the region of Bengal. We will talk about that in next class. But this is about the political development in India from about 4th century to about 6th century, a period of approximately 200 or more than 200 years. This period is often called Golden Age of Ancient India because of developments in literature. We talked about sources से ही clear है, the type of literature we are talking about. Some of the greatest works, some of the greatest scholars in India lived during this period, which includes all the names we have discussed as part of Navratnas, but also names such as Shudrak, who wrote Mrichkatika, Aryabhat, right, or Vatsyayan. All of these are great names who are not part of as such Navratna, but they lived during Gupta period and contributed a lot to literature, science, technology, astronomy, etc. The final, as I already have discussed, that the final compilation of the religious texts, Puranas or Mahabharats and Ramayana, all of that, what we study right now, actually emerged during Gupta period. The script which we use today, the Devanagari script, hai, that is a direct contribution from a type of script which was used by Gupta called Siddham script. The Siddhamatrika, there is a script called Siddhamatrika, which actually became mother of many scripts, including Devanagari script, which we use to write Hindi. So this is about political development. Any questions? Because we still haven't, this topic is not complete. In fact, we are going to discuss now administration, economy, society, and religion. So any questions? So give this heading Gupta administration. Gupta administration. Write down few things here. The empire was divided into provinces called bhuktis. The empire was divided into provinces called bhuktis under the charge of Uparika, under the charge of Uparikas. Uparikas. Bhuktis were divided into districts. Bhuktis were divided into districts called Vishayas. Under the charge of Vishayapati. Vishyapati. Vishyapati actually. It's Vishyapati. Under the charge of Vishyapati. Vishayas were divided into Vithis. Vishayas were divided into Vithis, which comprised of many villages. Which comprised of many villages. Comprised of many villages. At the village level, Gramika, Gramadhyaksh. At the village level, Gramika, Gramadhyaksh played an important role. Played an important role. Vishyapati was assisted. Vishyapati was assisted. Vishyapati was assisted by Nagar Sreshtin. Vishyapati was assisted by Nagar Sreshtin. In bracket you can write chief merchant or banker. नगर श्रेष्ठिन, कॉमा, सार्थ वह, सार्थ वह, चीफ कारवां ट्रेडर, चीफ कारवां ट्रेडर, प्रथम कुलिका, प्रथम कुलिका, चीफ आर्टिजन, प्रथम कायस्थ, प्रथम कायस्थ, ऑफिसर इन चार्ज ऑफ रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन, ऑफिसर इन चार्ज ऑफ रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन, रेवेन्यू कलेक्शन. Right on the next point. At the central level, important officials, important officials were called Kumar Amatya, were called Kumar Amatya, who were charge of, who were charge of, who were charge of a particular department which was called Adhikaran, which was called Adhikaran. The Minister of Foreign Affairs was called Sandhi Vigrah. The Minister of Foreign Affairs was called Sandhi Vigrah. संधि का मतलब होता है फ्रेंडशिप, विग्रह मतलब हॉस्टिलिटी. The Minister of Foreign Affairs was called Sandhi Vigrah. Right on the next bullet point. Guptas focused more on cavalry than chariots. Guptas focused more on cavalry than chariots. Chariots. The tax varied from 1/4 to 1/6. The tax varied from 1/4 to 1/6. Villagers were subjected to Villagers were subjected to forced labor. Villagers were subjected to forced labor called Vishti. Villagers were subjected to forced labor called Vishti. Vishti. So Vishti was considered a type of tax, that people who cannot pay tax, you do not have to pay any money to them, they will work for the kingdom. For example, let's say there is a military camp, then taking care of that military camp, that will occur completely free of cost by the village nearby. So that is an example of Vishti. Or converting a fallow land into agricultural land, that will occur without paying any money, again as part of Vishti. So these will be examples of Vishti. Write down next. One more point you can write here is, there was clear demarcation of civil and criminal law. There was clear demarcation of civil and criminal law. Civil and criminal law. Now there is a very interesting feature which you should know, that even though this concept did exist earlier also, this concept of guilds of merchants, which we call shreni, in ancient India, this is a term guild hai, that actually comes from, again it is an English word, it comes from medieval Europe or even ancient Europe. but similar type of merchant guilds where people who are involved into same type of vocation, they often formed a group. जैसे अभी भी आप देखोगे अलग अलग इंडस्ट्री ग्रुप्स हैं जो लॉबी करते हैं गवर्नमेंट को पॉलिसी बनाने के लिए, फेवरेबल पॉलिसी बनाने के लिए. टेक्सटाइल ग्रुप अलग है, कुछ लेदर कंपनीज का अपना खुद का एक अपना ग्रुप है. तो similar type of groups existed during Gupta period. However, we have references of Shrenis in Mahajanpad period, in Mauryan period also, and we also find them into Gupta's period. But during Gupta period, Shrenis played a very important role in administration. Lot of time, these Shrenis, many royal laws were not applicable to them. They had their own set of rules and regulations. For example, if a member of Shreni is committing some sort of crime, if that crime is not very heinous crime, then for smaller crimes, the rules of Shreni were used to punish him, not some royal law. So Shrenis in that sense were very much autonomous. Lot of Shrenis who became very powerful, became very rich, they actually patronized lot of religious activity. सबसे बढ़िया एग्जांपल जो है इसका अजंता केव है आपका. Now Ajanta cave was not constructed by Guptas, it was constructed by Vaktaks. But remember Vaktaks and Guptas, their allies. Ajanta cave का जो construction है, it occurred under Vaktak rulers, but majority of the fund it actually came from Shrenis. We find Shrenis in Bengal, we find Shrenis in Gujarat, we find Shrenis in Punjab, we find Shrenis in Malwa region. So all across the country we have evidence of existence of Shrenis who had lot of autonomy. And the best part was two more things. They could issue their own coins. एक तो royal coins है, but lot of times Shrenis also issued their coins, and they often supported their members. So for example, Shreni had its own funding mechanism. If somebody has to start a business, then he will be given or she will be given a loan, and that loan has to be repaid after some time. So Shrenis also supported its members if they have any type of business venture. So Shrenis hai, even though they have existed in the previous time, during Gupta period they played a significant role in economic administration of cities. And the same concept continued even after decline of Guptas. So we do find Shrenis during the period of Harshvardhana. We also find during Chalukyas, Cholas, Pallavas, all of them, all of these kingdoms have evidence of existence of Shrenis. तो आप लिख सकते हो during Gupta period, Shreni played an important role in economic administration. Shrenis were association of traders, merchants and artisans, Generally, a separate Shreni existed for persons engaged in same vocation. Separate Shreni existed for persons engaged in same vocation. Shrenis had lot of autonomy. They enjoyed certain immunities. And often were governed by their own law. They were governed by their own law. They also issued coins. And acted as banks such as providing loans to merchants, loan to its members, providing loan to its members. तो ये एक बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग फीचर है, श्रेणी एज एन इंस्टीट्यूशन which even though existed during Buddhist period, Mahajanpat period, Mauryan period, but played a significant role during Gupta period. There is one more thing which R.S. Sharma mentions, that we do find some elements of feudalism during Gupta administration. जब हम बात करते हैं इकोनॉमिक सेटअप की, इकोनॉमिक डिजाइन की, there are various types of economic systems which comes into existence. One of the earlier type of economic system in Europe was feudalism. Feudalism was a setup where king was no longer very powerful. However, there were very feudal lords into kingdom. These feudal lords often owned a large piece of land, and on this large piece of land, he employed a lot of people who did farming, who were given salary, however, very meager salary. Most of the money went to the feudal lords. Feudal lords often also maintained their own private army to tackle any type of law and order situation if people are not doing their job properly, to take care of such issues. And from time to time, if king requires, this private army was also supported in warfare. So this was a feature of administration during medieval Europe. This is called feudalism. From feudalism, you had now capitalism and so on and so forth. So feudalism जो है एक earlier economic design था which existed in Europe. Now wherever people find similar setup, where you have feudal lords who are becoming very powerful, who own a large piece of land, and they often maintain their own army, such type of designs we call this feudal design. In Gupta period, even though the true start of feudalism in India that starts with Harshvardhan, but some elements of feudal economy does exist during Gupta period, in contrast to Mauryan period. How do we know that? Why R.S. Sharma says that you have some elements of feudalism? For example, land grants were given to a lot of commander-in-chiefs as well as Brahmins, and so many commander-in-chief had acquired larger tracts of land, very similar to feudal lords of medieval Europe. तो आप लिख सकते हो एक और, write on next paragraph. Elements of feudalism. Elements of feudalism are found in Gupta administration. Are found in Gupta administration, such as such as such as feudal chiefs acquired large tracts of land, and paid tribute to the empire. Tax-free land was granted to religious functionaries. Tax-free land was granted to religious functionaries, which was started by Satvahans. Higher officials were paid in cash, but sometimes also in land grants. Higher officials were paid in cash, but sometimes also in land grants. Give the heading economy. There are few things about economy which should be very much clear. Guptas issued gold coins called dinaras. Even today you will find some currencies known as dinaras. जो रुपया है, for example, रुपया जो अभी हम currency use करते हैं, that was issued by Sher Shah Suri. But you'll still find that many countries of this world Their currency is called dinara, which actually goes back to Gupta coin of ancient India. So the gold coins especially were called dinars, which were issued by Gupta rulers first. Second, it was an agrarian economy. However, the major source of revenue apart from land revenue was actually uh, trade. Now, here is an interesting thing that even though outland trade, for example, external trade had declined a lot, the reason was, in fact, external trade declined. That is why Kushana Empire also declined. ये हमने discuss किया था previous classes में कि Kushanas were at very strategic location which connected China to Europe. तो Kushanas, because they ruled over Kashmir, Punjab, जो पूरा Kandahar region है, Central Asian region, because of that, Kushanas collected lot of revenue from custom duty. Europeans later learned the art of making silk, and silk was a very coveted item. Many more items were exported, but silk was a very popular item. So when Europeans learned the art of making silk, they had their own indigenous textile industry. Because of that, overall the trade had declined. Some other changes, it is not as simple. There are other factors also which led to decline of ancient silk route. But the point is that the external trade that had declined at this point of time. However, Gupta's under Gupta period, the internal trade had that flourished a lot. We have many ports all across the country which were used for trading within the country, even though external trade did continue, but it had declined significantly. Land was very important. We come across various type of land holdings, various type of revenue which was used by kingdom. So write down few things here. Gupta issued Gupta's issued largest number of gold coins called dinaras, largest number of gold coins called dinaras. These coins portrayed portrayed kings and queens kings and queens along with along with gods. Silver coins were also issued. Silver coins were also issued. Also issued. However, number of copper coins were less. Number of copper coins were less. Even though, even though the long distance trade declined, the long distance trade declined, internal trade flourished, internal trade flourished, internal trade flourished. Some of the important ports in India, some of the important ports in India during Gupta period, during Gupta period, where Kalyan, Chaul, Kalyan, Chaul, Mangalore. So Kalyan, Chaul, that will be in modern day Maharashtra. Bangalore will be in Karnataka. Kadura and Ghantshala in Andhra Pradesh, in Andhra region. Kadura and Ghantshala. Write down next point. Land was divided in Kshetra. Land was divided in क्षेत्र, agricultural land, ब्रैकेट में लिख लेना, agricultural land, खिला, wasteland, wasteland, अप्रहत, which is again jungle or wasteland, अप्रहत, बस्ती, which is habitable land, and गपत सरह, pastoral land, pastoral land. क्षेत्र कल्टिवेबल, खिला वेस्टलैंड, अप्रहत जंगल और वेस्टलैंड, वस्ती हैबिटेबल लैंड, गपत सरह pastoral land for animal rearing basically. Land grants were given, land grants were given to Brahmins, land grants were given to Brahmins, which was tax free and hereditary, called agrahar. Land grants were given to Brahmins, which was tax free and hereditary, called agrahar, called agrahar. ये जो प्रैक्टिस ऑफ अग्रहर है, गुप्तास पीरियड के टाइम फिर भी कम है. इन लेटर पीरियड बाय चालुक्यास, पल्लवास एंड चोलास, दिस प्रैक्टिस further flourished. Because of that, during Chola period, Imperial Chola, when we study about Rajya Raja or Rajendra Chola, you come across that many villages emerged. These villages are called Brahmadeya villages. And these villages were villages of basically Brahmins, which emerged because of this tax-free land called Agrahar. So Agrahar and Brahmadeya जो है, ये दोनों साथ में use होता है. Difference simply ये है कि Agrahar is the land which is tax-free, and with lot of this land, जो settlement which emerged, that settlement we call this Brahmadeya settlement, which is basically a village of Brahmins which was completely tax-free. Another land grant was, write down, another land grant was Devgrahar, 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 which was given to Brahmins as well as merchants, which was given to Brahmins as well as merchants, for repair and worship of temples, for repair and worship of temples. Write down next point. Many land measurement units were used. Many land measurements were used, such as Angul, Hast, Dhanu, Angul, Hast, Dhanu, Angul, Hast, Dhanu. ये जो तीन यूनिट है, these are for smaller units, but then you also have larger units which is called Adhvapa, Dronvapa and Kulvapa. Adhvapa, Kulvapa and Dronvapa. अभी जो बिघा या एकड़ जो हम यूज करते हैं, you can imagine such type of unit used during Gupta period. Mining and metallurgy flourished. Mining and metallurgy flourished. Flourished. Iron, tin, lead, bronze. Iron, tin, lead, bronze, manganese, etc. were used. Iron, tin, lead, bronze, etc. were used. These are some elements of economy. Let's finish Gupta's period in today's class itself. I will extend the class by some time. In tomorrow's class, we will talk about main themes, which will be Harshvardhan. It will talk about Chalukyas, and then we will talk about three rulers, three set of kingdoms simultaneously. Class khatam nahi hui aaj ki abhi. Three rulers simultaneously. That will be Rashtrakutas, Pratihars, and Palas. That will end our discussion about ancient history. I'm assuming that Cholas का discussion जो है आपके medieval India में हो रखा होगा, right? Cholas के बारे में पढ़ाया होगा जो imperial Cholas है, not the Cholas of Sangam age, but imperial Cholas such as आदित्य चोलन और राज्य राजा चोलन और राजेंद्र चोलन, राइट? जैसे PS2 जो मूवी है, PS1 या PS2 मूवी अभी जैसे रिलीज हुआ है, PS2 मूवी जो नाम PS2 है और PS पोनिनिन सेल्वन, दैट इज एक्चुअली राज्य राजा चोला. So Rajaraja Chola and Rajendra Chola are considered two of the greatest ruler of Cholas. Who, by the way, Rajendra Chola, for example, is contemporary of Muhammad Ghazni. That when Muhammad Ghazni had attacked India, then Rajendra Chola had also attacked Bengal region. He was fighting with Pala rulers. At one point of time, their armies was very close to each other, and there is a very good chance that they knew the presence of other because both of them had invested a lot into spy network to know the presence of and strength of neighboring kingdoms, but they did not fight as such. But at one point of time their armies was hardly like few hundred kilometers away from each other. So anyways, in next class, which will be last class, we will finish our discussion with what we call tripartite struggle, which occurred between three set of rulers called Rashtrakutas, Pratiharas, and Pala rulers. Give the next heading: society and religion. Society and religion. Society and religion. Especially जो discussion of, by the way, society है, this cannot be considered as such golden age of ancient India, because we already have talked about the social evils of caste system in the previous classes, that how caste system prevailed even during Mauryan period or post Mauryan period, but during Gupta period that took further strong stance. जो पूरा caste identities and they became very popular. One of the most successful thing which occurred, that Brahmins were able to integrate Varn and caste together. However, they both are two separate concepts and they both have separate origin also. Caste is nowhere mentioned in the ancient literatures such as Veda or any type of Vedic literature. Caste as a concept, this emerged, became very popular at earliest 1st century BC or by 1st century AD. तो जो पूरा period है from 1500 BC, when we talk about Vedic period till 1st century BC, you have no mention of caste as such. The prevalence of caste is not there in the society. But in 1st century, after that, we do have prevalence of caste in the society. How all this caste and subcaste may have occurred, historians have a theory about it with the help of sociologists, that it may have occurred that as Vedic religion spread more and more, many new tribes were integrated. Many foreigners also, by the way, had settled at this point of time. For example, think about Greeks and Parthians, Shakas, Kushans, they had also settled here. Jaise Rudradaman was a Shaka ruler, but he married a Hindu princess, accepted Hinduism. Similarly, Kushans became worshipper of Shiva and Vishnu. Kanishk was a patron of Buddhism also. So the theory is that as Vedic religion spread, as Hinduism spread, as more and more tribes were integrated, and more foreigners settled into India, they accepted the religion. And the best part of the religion was that as such कोई एक fixed book नहीं है, कोई fixed philosophy नहीं है. Anybody who wants to practice in any way, they can do that. They were free to do that. That is why we have so many different traditions even within Hinduism which exist in the entire part of the country. So that may have led to that as more and more tribes and more foreigners settled, all of that may have occurred different type of caste or subcaste. The second thing which you have to imagine here is that even when foreigners had settled or new tribes were integrated, people who were of warrior class or people who were of ruling class of tribes, they were often given higher caste. For example, they were given the status of kshatriya, and people who were at the lower class into a tribe, they were given lower caste. So that is how the proliferation of caste and subcaste may have occurred in the society, which process went on for hundreds of years. A problem यही है कि because this became such a powerful institution, and that institution, social institution, and that institution was now used by one group of people or some group of people to rule over another group of people. That is why it became so prevalent. Just for example, think about Manusmriti. Manusmriti talks about varnas or caste in detail. That became a popular book, but people did not go to the Upanishads because Upanishads are difficult to comprehend. Manusmriti simple. Manusmriti इतना इतने ज़्यादा पैराडॉक्सेस हैं उस बुक में, खुद में इतने, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल मनुस्मृति का जो ऑथर है वो क्लियरली इज अ very conservative author. He's not very clear about the ideas. For example, at one instance will praise woman a lot, but another instance will use all the wrong adjectives to describe women. The book also talks about that how Shudras do not have the right to listen to Vedas. There is a reason why Ambedkar burned Manusmriti. So that became a popular book. But जो earlier Upanishads हैं या Vedas हैं, they did not remain very popular, which is frankly a travesty. But nonetheless, the proliferation of caste and subcaste hai, it occurred very well during Gupta period with more and more integration of new tribes and settlement of foreigners. So a new social institution emerged, which became very powerful also. Not new, frankly, it was already there, but it became very powerful during Gupta period. The condition of women definitely declined without any doubt. That already had declined, or decline phase that had continued, but during Gupta period it had declined. Women had no right of as such property, very limited access to education. In fact, higher class women suffered even more because they were not as such given the responsibility of go outside and do some work compared to women of lower class who often participated into economic activity. Lot of things which were can be considered liberal in nature from earlier periods, that no longer remained in the case. Just say there is a very famous tradition of what we call niyog. Niyog was basically that a woman could marry younger brother if the older brother has died, or if, let's say for example, woman cannot conceive, then she should be able to conceive with the help of younger brother. जैसे महाभारत का एग्जाम्पल ले लो, सबसे बढ़िया एग्जाम्पल अगेन महाभारत में, that how Kunti and Madri they conceive with the help of gods, respective gods. That is how Arjun is son of Indra or Yudhishthir is son of Dharmaraj. So जो नियोग है, which was perhaps uh, I'm not going to use the word popular, but it definitely was part of the society, but no longer that was there in the Gupta period. Woman had no as such right to ancestral property. However, जो कात्यायना स्मृति है, for example, it does talk about that woman had access to certain type of properties. जैसे कात्यायन talks about the concept of स्त्रीधन. अब स्त्रीधन देखो क्या है? स्त्रीधन is all the wealth or all the jewelry or any type of gifts which you receive during marriage from both your father, mother, as well as your father-in-law and mother-in-law family. So that is stridhan. There are textbooks which differ regarding widow remarriage. For example, certain texts clearly say that widow remarriage is not allowed, but at the same time, there are certain texts who do mention that if, let's say, for example, a woman has been deserted by a man and some years have passed, then she is allowed to remarry. तो जो रीमैरिज को लेके है यहाँ पे बहुत क्लैरिटी नहीं है, डिफरेंट टेक्स्ट टेल यू डिफरेंट थिंग, बट मोर और लेस विडो रीमैरिज जो है दैट वाज नॉट वेरी प्रेवलेंट इन द सोसाइटी. अनदर थिंग, कॉन्सेप्ट ऑफ जो सती है विच कंटिन्यूड फॉर मेनी मोर ईयर्स, द सती का जो एविडेंस है वी स्टार्ट फाइंडिंग दैट इन टू गुप्ता एंड पोस्ट गुप्ता पीरियड विच कंटिन्यूड फॉर मेनी मोर ईयर्स. सो लॉट ऑफ सोशल इविल्स which did exist earlier, but they became more and more stronger during this period. And that is why a lot of historians also are conscious about using this adjective golden age of ancient India, because when we study social history, then it was not so much of a golden age. So you can write down few things here. The proliferation of caste and subcaste occurred in the society. The proliferation of caste and subcastes occur in the society. Occurred in the society. This may have occurred. This may have occurred with integration of new tribes, integration of new tribes and foreigners Have I talked about Chandals before? That I have talked about. So Chandals, which by the way were very much prevalent during Mauryan period also, their condition further worsened. The Chandals, and they are often called Panch Varna or outside Varna system. They are the original untouchables. Chandals were often involved into activities such as taking care of dead body or meat industry, something like that. And they were considered untouchable. So Chandals ka jo condition hai, that further declined, even though condition of Shudras improved. So for example, in early period, you did not have right of land holding for Shudras, but in Gupta's period or in post-Gupta period, we do find that Shudras now can own piece of land and can do their own cultivation. तो आप ये भी लिख सकते हो. The position of Shudras improved. The position of Shudras improved. They were represented as farmers. They were represented as farmers. However, number of Chandals increased. Number of Chandals increased, and their condition became more abysmal. Their condition became more abysmal. More abysmal. Write down next point. The position of women in society declined. Position of women in society declined. Declined. For example, women did not have right over ancestral property. Women did not have right over ancestral property. Ancestral property, comma, women of higher classes were not free to earn their livelihood. Women of higher classes were not free to earn their livelihood. However, one more thing you can add here, the concept of Stridhan also emerged. Stridhan also emerged, which includes gifts from father and in-laws family. Which includes gifts from father and in-laws family. Sati, immolation of widow. Sati, immolation of widow is found during Gupta period. However, आप एक line add कर सकते हो. Some books also allow widow remarriage. Some books also allow widow remarriage. So this is about society. In next paragraph, write down Vaishnavism flourished along with Shaivism. Vaishnavism flourished along with Shaivism. Along with Shaivism. However, Gupta rulers were tolerant of Buddhism and Jainism. Were tolerant of Buddhism and Jainism. Jainism. The cult of Shakti and Tantra. The cult of Shakti and Tantra. The cult of Shakti and Tantra emerged around this time. Emerged around this time. Shakti is basically worship of goddess Durga and all the forms of Durga. तांत्रिक फिलॉसफी जो है बड़ा ही कॉम्प्लिकेटेड फिलॉसफी है, इसको एक्सप्लेन करना बड़ा मुश्किल है. तांत्रिक फिलॉसफी जो है, lot of time whenever people think of tantricism, they associate it with two things: weird sexual practices and aghoris who eat meat of dead body, something like that. So ये जो practice है, which may seem like that it's an aghast practice if you think about it, eating meat of dead body. But the problem is that if you do not understand the philosophy, then you will find this as a aghast practice. So tantric followers, and they consider everything in this world as worthy of worship. And जो तंत्र का मेन गोल ये है that जो भी consciousness, they believe in a universal consciousness, and this universal consciousness can be attained with anything, which also can include, by the way, dead body. So why do we have to have some sort of hate or some sort of aghast towards dead body? So tantra is a much more complicated philosophy. Often in regular practices or in videos or in stories, the tantrics, and they are often considered as some sort of aghoris who are involved into such practices, and there is a very much negative connotation associated with them. But frankly, jo tantra as a philosophy hai, it is much more complicated than that. So just limiting them to such type of practices will be gross injustice. जो शक्ति है, follower of Shakti, so along with Shaivism and Vaishnavism, जो शक्ति का worship है, this is also a contrast, by the way, that woman position declined but Shakti cult became very powerful, right? So this is also a very interesting paradox which exists in the society. Few more things you can write here. Idol worship in temples became a common phenomena. Idol worship in temples became a common phenomena. Common phenomena. Few more things, not anything to do with literature or religion, but you can write is the Siddham script. The Siddham script the Siddham script evolved from the Gupta Brahmi script, evolved from the Gupta Brahmi script, which became or which led to, sorry, which led to modern scripts such as Devanagari, which led to modern scripts such as Devanagari. One last point you can add here is the game of chess. It's said to have originated from this time. The game of chess is said to have originated during this time, called Chaturanga. called Chaturang. However, as we have discussed this earlier, that even during Indus Valley civilization, we have found a play which looks very close to game of chess. So, anyways, Chaturang as a game was very popular during Gupta period, and from there the game of chess may have evolved. Guptas and Mauryas, these are considered as two great political unifying forces in India, but there are inherent differences between them. The way we have discussed, you can easily understand the differences. First, in terms of extent also, Mauryan Empire was bigger than Gupta Empire. एक जो बहुत major difference तो यही होगा. Another major difference ये होगा कि जो Mauryan rulers हैं, they patronized many religions. For example, think about Chandragupta Maurya, who patronized Jainism, Bindusar patronized Ajivika, Ashoka patronized Buddhism. Later, Ashoka के जो successors हैं, there are cases where they patronized Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism. So they patronized many religions. जो Gupta rulers हैं, they mainly patronized Vaishnavism or Shaivism. However, they were tolerant of other religions. They did for example, they did patronize some Buddhist art, such as some sculpture traditions. This is Sarnath school of sculpture जो है that emerged during Gupta period, which again a Buddhist school of sculpture, or Nalanda monastery, which is a great example. But generally जो Vaishnavism है that flourished. उसका best example ये आप ऐसे समझ लो कि Buddha also became one of the avatars of Vishnu, right? So जो पूरा avatars of जो विष्णु के 10 अवतार हैं वहाँ पे Buddha also became one of the avatars of Vishnu. So that is also a major difference. The third major difference is that जो Gupta Empire है compared to Mauryan Empire. So Mauryan Empire is considered more centralized in nature. That it was a proper bureaucratic administration. There were provinces, but these provinces, they may have some autonomy, but fundamentally there was a very tight control over those provinces from Patliputra. How true that is, it is very difficult to answer. But many historians actually do think that Mauryan Empire was a very much centralized empire. Gupta Empire was not so centralized. इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि Gupta also became a feudal administration, but the level of centralization was more in case of Mauryan Empire. That is also a difference. Another difference is that while Mauryan Empire declined mainly because of internal reasons, if you think about it, Gupta Empire declined mainly because of external invasions. This last Mauryan ruler was killed by his own commander-in-chief, Pushyamitra Shung. But Mauryan Empire का जो decline है, that mainly occurred because of external invasions. Gupta bureaucracy was not well developed, but their legal system was more developed than Mauryan system. जैसे जो Gupta's civil and criminal law है, there is a proper demarcation which we do not find during Mauryan period. जो Gupta's judicial administration है, that was more developed. However, जो Mauryan bureaucracy है, that was more developed. So there are a lot of differences between these two kingdoms, and they both are considered as such political unifying rules of ancient India. In last class, we will talk about some more themes, some smaller kingdoms, and along with kingdoms, what other type of developments occurred. We will start with the next class with Harshvardhan. Who was Harshvardhan? What is his background? And then we will talk about Chalukyas, we'll talk about Pallavas, Rashtrakutas, Palas, and finally Pratiharas. So I will see you guys in tomorrow. Do we have a class tomorrow? So tomorrow.